Kept you waiting, huh?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Rookies and Codecs, a Metal Gear podcast. I'm Isaac, and with me I have the myth of Mother Base himself, Alex. How are you doing, Alex?
I don't know what I did to earn that title. I still feel like I am stumbling through this series as I learn how each of these unique experiences, but yet familiar experiences, work. So I'm doing pretty good. It's like we're recording this via cassette tape, so you'll have to go into your Twitch menus or your YouTube or whatever, and make sure you listen to those.
So we are finally at our destination of what, 2 months? How long has this been in the making? I believe it's 2 months.
It's been about 2 months. To be fair, I think the game was longer than either of us anticipated, and I think that's because this game is meant to be played with others, and if you don't have access to the multiplayer, then it's going to take you some extra grinding for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I felt that because just before we get off here, I played this on the Xbox Series X. I played the 360 version. And what version did you play, Alex?
So I played the PlayStation 3 version. So I was able. So the PlayStation 3 has free peer-to-peer multiplayer. So that's something that it had over the Xbox 360. There was no membership or anything. So it's like I was able to play with other people. Granted, the amount of people playing Peace Walker on the PlayStation 3 has greatly diminished. But I did find like a core amount of people to play along with me. Like once they figured out what I was doing, and occasionally some of them would pop into the stream and hang out and help me with bosses and help me with grinding and stuff. So I mean, I think that really changed my experience. I think.
Now, it is important to note, too, that if you're listening to this by the end of this month, that will probably be a totally different ball game.
Yeah.
Because it is going to be included in the Master Collection Volume 2 that Konami's putting out at the end of the month. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to be hopping on PS5, Series X, PC, and getting into those servers and actually, it won't be as hard to find help doing these missions
From what I
as it has been
understand,
for us.
the Master Collection isn't going to be cross-platform, so like people that play the Switch version won't be playing with the PC version and whatever. So everybody will still be in their own ecosystem.
There'll be more than like two people online, though.
Right. Yeah, a lot of times.
Hopefully, that's the goal.
A lot of times I played with just random people from like Mexico of all places, because like when you get the other players in, it shows the flag of which country they're from.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, um, before we start off the show, is there any news, anything worth mentioning aside from the new Master Collection coming out at the end of the month?
I don't think so. I mean, we discussed the Sony stuff and the PlayStation debacle during our Master Collection 1-2 episode from a few weeks ago. But I don't think it's like, as far as like any major Metal Gear news, I think the biggest thing on the horizon is the Master Collection, which I'm hoping to have this episode out either the day before or the day of that release.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and pop in if you're ready.
Yeah, I think like with this being so anticipated, so I think I'm ready to just jump right into it.
All right. Well, we'll start like we always do with the development. So after the huge success that was Metal Gear Solid 4, Hideo Kojima felt that he had once again done all that he had set out to do with the series. So after trying to first step away following the completion of Metal Gear Solid 3, which Konami pushed for him to come back for 4. Um, Following Metal Gear Solid 4's completion, Kojima is quoted as saying, "At first, I was just going to create the overall guidelines and concepts for the project and leave it in the hands of my excellent staff. I was going to have a hand in the project as a producer and make titles other than MGS," said Kojima. "But I set the game in South American country of Costa Rica and created a story with themes about nuclear deterrence and the Cold War. It looked as if it may be very confusing to young people because of generational differences. So, in the end, I finally said, I'll do it." Peace Walker was made using a modified version of the Portable Ops engine, which Kojima has said that Portable Ops, he doesn't really see any uh, significance to that title other than it just being a stepping stone towards Peace Walker. So due to this, a lot of the team that worked on Portable Ops joined the main Kojima Productions team to work on Peace Walker. Even though this was the largest team to work on a single Metal Gear Solid game at the time, the development team was still split into 3 parts, as the production company was working on 3 separate projects at one time. So while development was underway on Peace Walker, there was also a team working on creating the Fox engine, which is going to be used later on for Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain. And there was a team working on the canceled Metal Gear Solid Rising. Now, Alex, I know that you weren't following Metal Gear at this time. Did you know that Metal Gear Solid Rising was a thing separate from Rising Revengeance?
No, not until like recently, like is sometime this year I learned about that. I don't remember exactly how. It was either somebody mentioned it on stream or I just somehow came across it. So it's like I'd like to watch once we get to Revengeance to maybe watch the trailers and maybe talk about those because I think there are trailers for that canceled project, right?
Yeah, so I've got here Metal Gear Solid Rising was originally announced in 2009 by Konami as a stealth focused hack and slash game, following right in between the events of Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 4. This was later handed over to Platinum Games and retooled into Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. So we'll handle all the Metal Gear Solid Rising stuff more on the Revengeance episode. And if you want to like get into watching the trailers and stuff like that, we can absolutely do that then.
Yeah, I think that'd
But
be cool.
I just thought that was an interesting little footnote that this was happening at the same time as Peace Walker. Um, so the interesting part about this is that while Peace Walker was the continuation of the main Metal Gear Solid story, Kojima was developing Rising as, quote, the vision of the future of Metal Gear without him. So while, which started a bit of a rivalry between the teams working on the 2 projects. Um, so there's actually a bit, if you go back, they had it like an online feud between the Rising team and the Peace Walker team, which was kind of interesting to see as I was doing the research for this. Peace Walker was originally titled Metal Gear Solid 5 Peace Walker. In October of 2024, Kojima posted a tweet saying, quote, "It's been 14 years since the release of Peace Walker. I was still in my mid 40s at the time. Many game companies had started shifting towards developing apps and feature phones. After creating Metal Gear Solid 4, I strongly felt the need for a proprietary engine. The leap forward for games in a vertical direction would only come after the engine was complete. In the meantime, I proposed Peace Walker as a way to evolve MGS horizontally. Initially, it was titled MGS 5 Peace Walker, but it faced strong opposition from overseas marketing, so we dropped the number title. Since it was for the PSP, we lowered the target age range to middle and high school students, aiming to discover younger fans and build a multi generational following, with parents and children enjoying the game together. So I thought that that was pretty interesting that they intentionally lowered their target age range, because you know, growing up, I I've talked a few times about the friend that I had growing up that really got me, not didn't get me into the series as much as just kind of put it on my radar. Um, his dad, all through his life was playing the Metal Gear Solid games on the PS1, PS2, and he, to the best of my knowledge, really got into it with Metal Gear Solid 3D and Peace Walker. So it's kind of interesting that that's them wanting to create that multi generational following. That's exactly what I experienced in my own life. Seeing it through my friend and his dad. Um,
Yes, it sounds like he succeeded.
but, but yeah, absolutely. Um, Many now consider Peace Walker to be the first in the Metal Gear Solid 5 trilogy, since it directly leads into the Metal Gear Solid 5 games, both thematically and in its stories. Uh, Fans also speculate about the growing involvement in the series from Kojima's superiors at Konami and Kojima's continued attempts to leave the series as being warning signs of things to come, which we will talk all about the Kojima and Konami drama as we move forward with Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain.
Oh yeah,
Um, but yeah, that's kind of like a cursory overview look at the development. So clearly, seems like Kojima's not really wanting to be involved at this point, but it seems like he feels like he has to, which I think is kind of funny because after the fallout between Kojima and Konami, everyone's just not letting Konami make any more Metal Gear games without Kojima.
yeah.
At least
Unless the
no
remakes.
original ones. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I've said, I think my opinion on that is I think that they should be allowed to do it, um, whether it be spin-offs or, um, I don't know. Like I think you know, obviously Kojima is an important puzzle piece, but I think that there are others that worked on the games that are still there. Like a lot of the production team behind Delta worked on Metal Gear Solid 5, 4, and Metal Gear Survive. Oddly enough,
Yeah, we'll see if those thoughts and feelings change by the time we get to the end of the series.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So we'll be playing the spin-offs. We'll see. Oh, this is a huge mistake. But I thought it was interesting because that they launched this on the PSP, and I wonder if they did that in case this little experiment wasn't successful. But when people talk about the PlayStation Portable, usually like the first like two games they talk about is Peace Walker and Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. Like those are the two like juggernauts on that system. Um, and I think it also speaks to the game's popularity that just a year later it was released on the PS3 and Xbox 360, and then the Vita in 2012. Um, so I think I think I think it was both a it was just I feel like them doing it on the PSP was a way for them to be like, well, if this little experiment doesn't work out, we'll just make this sort of non-canon thing, and then we'll move on to the real Metal Gear Solid 5 or whatever. Do you think that that's a good guess or?
that so from the limited research that I did, it seems like that's the case because Kojima wanted this to be like the next mainline entry, but Konami didn't want to put a number on it because it's on a portable system. They wanted the next mainline Metal Gear game to be on a home console, big blockbuster release. They saw um, the uh, it seems like, at least, they saw the handheld market the same way a lot of people look at like the DS and the GBA as kind of like a second class gaming console.
Yeah, or
Um,
just for kids or teenage
yeah,
kids and teenagers.
But honestly, I feel like for Peace Walker, that's a lot of its strength is the design behind that handheld mentality, because you've got all these missions that it feels like you're supposed to just hop in, do a mission, maybe two, hop out, and then come back again tomorrow. It's kind of like the Animal Crossing effect, almost. Just come in, do a couple tasks, and leave it for tomorrow.
Right.
Um, which, interestingly enough, you're talking about this being one of the juggernauts people think of when they think PSP. Um, so, Greg Miller, I know you're not hugely familiar with it. Maybe some people listening will know him a bit better than you do, but he's hugely influential person in the game journalist sphere. He started with IGN like back in like 2006, 7, something like that, and he's one of the founders of Kind of Funny. He's citing this game as being like his number one favorite game of all time ever,
Yeah.
which he was, part of the ones that were like going in the demo rooms, doing the interviews with Kojima. So like, I'm sure it hits people different in like whatever time and place they are in their lives.
Oh, for sure.
But um, yeah, I mean, it's no messing around. This Peace Walker is genuinely like a uh, great entry in the series, and I feel like Kojima's involvement, like his not necessarily his involvement, but his attitude towards developing the game when he could have just handed it off and been like, okay, just do whatever you want. Now he saw this as like a genuine next step and wanted it to be done properly. So that's, I mean, according to that quote, that's the whole reason he stuck around for the development. So I just think it's interesting because it feels like it's such a footnote in the history of the series for a lot of people, especially on the outside looking in, because it's not got that number attached to it. When really it deserves that kind of respect in the series.
Right. I mean, I think there's a reason it's being included with MGS4 in this upcoming Master Collection, as far as like the two one of the two main games, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I almost wonder if that's not to like emphasize Peace Walker a bit more too. The fact that it's one of the two headliners. Of course, we got Ghost Babel, um, but yeah, it's kind of interesting seeing how it was looked upon by Kojima back then, or no, Konami. I was right the first time. How it was looked at by Konami back then versus how it's being billed now that we've got the Master Collection coming back around.
Right.
Um,
And it's like it makes me after finishing this, it makes me more curious about what they did do with its precursor, Portable Ops, because I've not like watched any footage of it or anything, but um, I've read a little bit of like the background for Peace Walker, and then them basically saying they built upon the bones of Portable Ops to sort of make a bigger version of that with Peace Walker. So I'm kind of curious to see like what the origins of this game's gameplay loop is like once we get to Portable Ops.
yeah, that's one thing. Now, after having played this and fallen in love with it as much as I have, I'm in the same boat with you. I'm interested to kind of go back and see that when the time comes.
Um, but I mean, obviously, I mean we've talked a little bit about gameplay and development. Um, is there anything else we have as far as development, or should we go into the story next?
If you're ready for the story, we can go full steam ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm ready. This uh, what what I want to say about the story right off the bat is the presentation. Before you get into like the synopsis, I really love the comic book feel. I feel like that was a good compromise because obviously I mean there's a handful of CG cutscenes, I guess, or game cinematics, but most of the cutscenes in this game, like 95 to 99% of them, are like this comic book motion comic style. What did you think of that?
So I was gonna save this more for like the design section, but since you brought it up, I whenever I began playing this game, I just immediately started gushing to my wife because the like Japanese water paint esque style of the most of the um the comic motion comic whatever you want to call it um makes it feel so almost like an ancient story to me.
Yeah,
And then you've got whenever the like the chrysalis and that stuff start popping up in those comics, those are more of like rigid cell shaded like the western style of comics, and it feels like literally like an intruder into the story. Felt like that was such an interesting parallel between style and themes of the story. um, I honestly, I'm a huge comic book nerd.
same.
I I've read probably more comics than I can count, but that I feel like that helps in my appreciation for this. But I mean, you can. I was sitting there in the middle of Wingstop, gushing over this with my wife, and she was just sitting on the other side of the table, like kind of unimpressed, uninterested. I don't know, but it was I don't know, it's just so cool to me, and it's something that you can't really explain as much as, you just have to see what I'm talking about the that stark contrast between like the familiar style for Kojima and the developers of that water painting. It's like history. They're literally the Japanese art history, versus this new thing coming in, encroaching on the characters in the story, um, literally being like an invader barging in. Um, it's just I don't know. I'm gonna start repeating myself if I keep on rambling, but I love it very much.
Yeah, it's I think it's as far as like obviously the design, which we'll get more into later. But it's a unique way of telling the story, but it's also like it's clear that they had to do this because of the PSP's limitations. But it's one of those things where they take a limitation and turn it into a strength.
Oh yeah, and that's one thing that I feel like is lacking in a lot of the AAA games that we get today. Is I've always heard a quote, and I couldn't tell you where it's from now, but talking about how limitations create these creative workarounds that have given us so many um, innovations in the gaming space over the years, and it feels like we've kind of plateaued technologically, and that people are having infinite money to throw at these projects like GTA 6, for example. Literally they could have worked on that game for another 10 years if they wanted to because of all the money they're raking in.
Oh yeah, for sure.
um but that kind of development, you don't have to worry about, oh, I've got this that I want to do but I can't. How do we figure it out to where we can do a version of what we want and get those new, innovative, like unique things about these different games. Um, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Peace Walker, not the current state of gaming.
Right.
um, but yeah, you how did you like the comic style?
Like I said, I love it. As I think most of the QT, well, most of the QTE stuff was manageable. And we'll get to one like once we get to a certain story point that caused me a lot of problems. Uh, so you know, speaking of story, from what I understand, it's like I think the setup for this game is really interesting. So should we get into that?
Yeah, let's go ahead. Um, so I'm just going to be kind of reading through this. I've still got like 17 pages left on my document. So whenever we get to a boss fight, key story points, we'll stop and discuss it. But if there's anywhere
Sure.
along the way that you want to interject something, you just let me know and we'll stop and chat for a second.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds good to me.
All right. So having left his military career in the U.S. behind, uh, Snake, now known as Big Boss, founded the Military Sans Frontiers, the NSF, and stationed his troops on the coast of Colombia. During a combat training session in November of uh, the year is not here, in the 70s, I believe. Uh,
It's 1974.
okay, thank you.
No problem.
MSF subcommander Kazuhira Miller returned to their base camp with two visitors, assuring Snake they were not CIA and had not been followed. Snake and Miller then met up with the two guests in their office. Roman Galvez Mena, a distinguished scholar of the Costa Rican government, and his student Paz Ortega Andrade were seeking the MSF's help in repelling an unknown armed force that had entered their country. The local authorities had claimed that they were a multinational security firm hired by the Developmental Corporation of Costa Rica, though Galvez believed this to be false due to their advanced weapons and equipment, hinting that La CIA may be involved. Since Costa Rica itself was unable to bear arms due to its peace constitution, Galvez wished to hire the MSF as a deterrent, offering them a forward operating base off the coast of the Caribbean and a chopper for transport as payment. The government would also provide aid to them unofficially. Believing that military force was unlikely to solve the issue and that the MSF were not simply dogs of war, Snake was reluctant to accept Galvez's offer. Entering the discussion, Paz proclaimed her overwhelming desire for peace in her country, revealing a passionate hatred for war, though Snake simply apologized to the young girl. A few days prior, Paz had been captured by the mysterious security company near a supply port north of Puerto Limon while searching for a lost friend. She was subsequently imprisoned and tortured, though she was later able to escape. After describing these events to Snake, Galvez then stated that they were aware of his identity as Big Boss, which was why they had come to him. After some further discussion away from the two visitors, Miller expressed the view that Galvez's offer was an opportunity to expand the MSF and put down some roots, though Snake was not entirely convinced. The two also began to suspect that Galvez was actually working for the KGB, and by allying themselves with him, they'd be making an enemy of America. Confronted with this knowledge, Galvez dropped his facade and explained his mission. Since the Soviets wished to establish a socialist stronghold in Central America, he had been ordered to hire the MSF to investigate the CIA's suspicious activities and force them out of Costa Rica. Having concealed any KGB affiliation from Paz, Galvez played back a tape cassette that her friend had recorded prior to their escape. Snake was shocked to hear the voice of his supposedly deceased mentor, the boss, to which Galvez confirmed from voice print analysis. With Galvez threatening to burn the tape using the cigarette lighter from his prosthetic right hand, Snake finally relented, though he claimed he would be doing it for Paz. Now, that's a big blurb that's literally just the first 15 minutes of the game, but it sets up a lot for where we're kind of going and the journey that Snake goes on throughout the game. um, so do you have anything you want to say about that part?
Yeah, I think that right off the bat, this David Hayter's performance as Big Boss is different in this game, especially with his tone, the way he sounds. Like he sounds like he's been smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, and I think, yeah, you know, now that I've like had time to like look at Metal Gear Solid 3, I've begun to see more of the differences between Solid Snake and Naked Snake, based more off their subtle personality differences. Um, but here, I think that Big Boss is a whole separate character based off of his attitude, his tone of voice, and the way he carries himself, especially. Um, like this is a person that is, in my mind, while confident in his abilities, is not necessarily confident socially, um, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that this intro does a really great job of setting up some of the uh, contradictions that Big Boss is going to put himself in, because like you said, he wasn't really interested. It's like maybe he wanted to help on like a moral level, but he is too wrapped up in what he's doing and whether or not he's ready to full on turn his back on his country. But the moment that he finds out that the boss could be alive, despite the fact that he shoots her in the face at the end of three, his attitude changes completely.
Oh yeah, you can definitely feel like the confliction in this grizzled veteran of war. I mean, he's probably at this point killed more people than he can count. He's totally desensitized to that aspect of it. He's looking at this more as a business, looking for a home for his people. And um, whenever they bring this up, I felt like a big part of him agreeing to do this, before Paz shows on the tape, is the fact that they're going to get a base that they can use for their men. That way they're not just constantly on the move one place to another.
Yeah, they're not in some sort of shack on the beach,
Yeah.
just fighting by the ocean.
All right, it feels like he's kind of sees himself more as like, okay, I'm responsible for these people. They do the fighting for me. I have to take care of them, uh more than he's actually out there getting his hands dirty himself at this point.
Right. Yeah, this is no longer a solo operation. He has to, if he's wanting to meet his goals, rely on these other people.
Yeah. um but moving forward, 6 days later, on November 10th, Snake arrives on the coast of Costa Rica at Playa del Alba after the MSF settle aboard the offshore plant provided by Galvez, dubbed Mother Base. With radio support from Miller, Snake infiltrates the jungle, where he evades the patrolling CIA mercenaries. Um, let's see. Snake witnesses a strange VTOL aircraft passing overhead before finding a map concerning the security company's bases in the region. Noticing the unusual amount of radiation film badges at the depot and recalling the radio man's um, earlier conversations regarding spears, Snake and Miller become alarmed that nuclear weapons were apparently being shipped into the country. This act would constitute a violation of uh, tat- the treaty ratified by Costa Rica in 1969, which forbid it to use, store, or transport nuclear weapons. Requiring more intel on the lay of the land and to verify the presence of nukes in the region, Miller suggests that Snake ally himself with local Sandinista guerrillas who had fled the Somoza regime in neighboring Nicaragua. It would help so much if I could speak.
You got this. You're
uh,
doing fine.
meanwhile, Meanwhile, Miller assured Snake that the ongoing repairs to the previously abandoned Mother Base and Paz offered to provide additional radio support from her school in Ciudad Colon. Miller then informed Snake that the Sandinistas' hideout in El Senegal was under attack and that he should hurry. Snake traverses the El Senegal jungle to the northwest. Um, He arrives at the FSLN's boathouse hideout and neutralizes the accompanying security detail before making contact with the hidden Sandinistas and their commandant, Amanda Valenciano Libre. Confirming that the security firm were indeed CIA, Amanda suspected that they were going to stage a coup similar to the one in Chile. Amanda claimed that their advanced hardware and multiple bases could not simply be to eradicate their group. The amount was comparable to Danang, and that something of more importance must be occurring. She told Snake of a mercenary base to the north, located in an abandoned factory, which had once served as a front for a drug production plant, providing provided by the KGB to help finance the revolution. A transport boat with mercenaries on board had also been heading upstream towards Irazu. Now, this part where they come into the Sandinistas' hideout, this is one of the first comic cutscenes that had the QTE in it.
Right.
Let me tell you, I when that QTE popped up, I had just set my controller down. I was enjoying the motion comic, and I missed it the first time. I grabbed it up and I completely missed it. And this is where I'm going to bring up an issue that I have with the motion comic cutscenes, because I am really bad for, especially if it's like a longer section of just people speaking back and forth or Snake riding on horseback somewhere. I'm going to set the controller down. So there were quite a few instances where I didn't feel like there was a big enough window for me to pick the controller up and press the button. Um, Especially when you had to like go L2 and R2 to like shoot the rockets or what have you. And there's one point later on when I had to try that QT section literally probably 4 or 5 times to actually get through it, because I just felt like the windows were just a bit too short on the QTEs. What do you think about them?
Once I got used to them, most of them were fine. I feel like, I mean, they kind of set up that the cutscenes are semi-interactive when you meet Paz, and you can like kind of creepily zoom in on her. And I know and it's like maybe they did that to try to facilitate that maybe she's hiding something. But I feel like maybe in the opening cutscene they could have, like with Pause, that maybe they could have set up a QTE that was optional, just to sort of set up like, oh, this game has QTEs. Like maybe there's a glass that falls off a table and you have to hit X to catch it, and if you miss it, no big deal. The cutscene just moves on. So maybe they could have set it up a little bit better. But it is at least generous with letting you try them over. Like it doesn't just, you don't just get a game over and start at way back at the beginning of the mission you were just on, at the very least.
Yeah.
Which was when I failed my first one. I was like, oh, am I gonna have to do this whole mission over again? But I feel like they kind of set this up with Metal Gear Solid 3, where the cutscenes are interactive, and I wonder if this is a way to make the players, who are usually teenagers for these games at the time anyway, help them pay attention to what's going on. Like, hey, I want you to listen to the story, so to make sure that people are engaged, we're going to have QTEs or hidden button prompts.
Yeah, make sure people aren't just setting it down and walking away and then, completely lost in the story. Because I will say there were some pretty lengthy cutscenes in here. Um, Nowhere near as long as like the ones in Metal Gear Solid 4. Which if you aren't aware of that, grab some popcorn and a drink or something whenever you hit the last cutscene in that game.
Okay.
I I I think it holds the Guinness world record for the longest continuous cutscene.
I've heard that rumor. It's like I'm curious to see what exactly that means once we get to it, get to that game.
Yeah, let's see. It's 71 minutes long.
Holy crap!
So yeah, it's an hour and 11 minutes. So yeah, have some popcorn handy when we get to that point. um anyway, moving on here. Amanda's Sandinistas were suddenly attacked by the aircraft Snake had witnessed earlier. This is the motion comic part that I was talking about. Revealed to be an unmanned weapon accompanied by several kidnapper drones, though a few drones were destroyed by Snake's Law. One was able to capture Amanda's younger brother Chico with its grappling hooks and escape. The Sandinistas then gave chase as the unmanned aircraft and drones departed, with Snake choosing to follow after enemy reinforcements were deployed to the area. Proceeding to the banana factory that Amanda had mentioned earlier, Snake was forced to neutralize an enemy LAV Type G and the heavily armored soldiers accompanying it. After departing the banana plantation, Snake found Amanda in the jungle where a kidnapper attempted to abduct her. Snake helped her to get free, though she was injured from the fall, breaking one of her legs in the process of landing. Um, Now you've played Ground Zeroes at this point.
I've played it 3 times. Yes, already.
So that was my first Metal Gear game. All I knew about Chico and Paz were that they were held captive at this off-site, like offshore black site. Um, so I genuinely, whenever I was playing through Peace Walker, I thought that at this point, Chico was just going to be gone. Like we were going to be trying to hunt him down throughout the game, and that Paz would be taken away at some point, and that's how they were both going to end up there. I thought we were not going to find Chico at all in Peace Walker. Um, so I actually got kind of excited for the direction it was going, and then it went, oh, well, we'll see. It went a different way from what I was expecting, um, but probably for the best.
Yeah, I.
Um,
Well, what do you think of Chico as a character?
uh, I really like Chico. You know, he's the younger brother that's trying to prove himself. You know, in a world full of adults, he's pretty much the only kid, or feels like he is. So he's trying to prove himself as, competent, as ready to go out and take care of his sister and her people. So he just feels like he has something to prove the entire time. And I really like that how Snake kind of takes him under his wing and he's like, hey, like you're just a kid. You've got time to grow into this role. It's time to be a kid right now. He's kind of trying to take him off that child soldier path that he's kind of got in front of him.
Right.
Um, so I really like that dynamic that they had. What about you?
Well, I mean, the character of Chico really spoke to me because of his passion for cryptids, and that's like how it gets across that this is still like a child. Like, I mean, he's 12 or 13 years old, so that's still really really young to be involved in something like this. So it's like the
Yeah,
moments
yeah,
where he's talking about, there's a giant lizard, look, like walking throughout the forest. I don't know how. So I
yeah.
listened to every
There's
single.
a basilisk out there.
Yeah. So thanks to our lovely viewers and their voting habits, I was tasked with listening to every single cassette in this game. So there was a lot of like Chico telling me about cryptids and stuff in the area, um, and yeah, I think that makes the story even more tragic because I mean, obviously, it's a video game and a fictional story, but there are places in the world where there are kids being involved with war situations where they're bomb carriers or something like that, and it's so like terrible and sad. It's like um, yeah, it. So I really like Chico as a character. I think he could be they could have made him really annoying because like whenever it feels like there are movies where there's an executive like, well, we have to have a kid character to make the kids, see themselves in the movie, and then that kid is always getting caught and always getting in trouble and is always annoying the adults. And it felt like Chico never crossed that line for me.
No, it felt like he was like genuinely like he was observing the adults around him and he was trying to emulate that behavior. And what you were mentioning with like the child soldiers and stuff, that's one thing that I love about Metal Gear is because it rides the line between campy and serious, and so it's able to tackle these really heavy topics without looking them head on. You can kind of like allude to it, show you the gist of what they're getting at without making it a deep, dark, like heavy scene that's going to rip your heart out and stomp on it. They'll be like, like with Chico, this is a real situation that a lot of kids around the world are in, and you've got Snake kind of talking to him and kind of trying to help him get a better perspective of life, one that he may not be able to get by himself. But you also don't see, you know, a bunch of kids out there on the battlefield. So it's different ways of handling the topic, but I really like the way that Kojima kind of rides that line without getting too heavy with the subject matter a lot of the times.
Right. Yeah. It feels like each of these games have gotten darker progressively uh, with its story and subject matter. Like, especially since the PS1 classic Metal Gear Solid. Like, obviously there was some serious stuff going on, but I feel like each one has brought in darker themes, and maybe it's because, I mean, with the start of Metal Gear Solid 3 and then working through Peace Walker and 5, obviously we're kind of working through the origins of an antagonist, right? So that it only seems natural.
Yeah, yeah. Um, moving on here. Afterwards, Snake told, or Amanda told Snake of a prison in the mountains, which was where Chico was most likely to be located. Snake asked if she would join the MSF aboard Mother Base until she could heal up. Realizing that they needed the guide to help track down the nuclear weapon shipment, Snake infiltrated the prison facility in Camino de Lava in order to rescue Chico, who was intimately familiar with the route into the mountains. Successfully locating Chico, the 12-year-old boy informed Snake that the shipping route used by the CIA mercenaries, cargo from the harbor, was first transported by barge through the marshes. It was then taken by train through a coffee plantation, then finally loaded into trucks to ship to the other side of Mount Irazu via an underground tunnel. Chico had never ventured any further since the area was supposedly guarded by a spirit, which he referred to as El Basilisco. Upset that he had betrayed his compass while being interrogated, Chico asked Snake to kill him. Snake refused, demanding instead that Chico prove his strength by fighting with him and becoming a new man. Chico joined his sister aboard Mother Base to support the MSF in their mission. Um, Snake then headed to the train depot east of the coffee plantation to stop the delivery of nukes. Rescuing several FSLN prisoners along the way, Snake reached the depot though he was too late to prevent the nukes from being transported via truck through the underground tunnel. He was then forced to neutralize an enemy T-72 Ural tank that had spotted him along with its escort unit after the tank demolished the tunnel entrance. Um, Now this is one part that I thought was really almost like funny in Austin Powers way, because he comes up to the train and he's like, oh, finally, he flings the door open and he sees the open door on the other side of the train, them going down the tunnel with it in the trucks. So he's like, he thinks he's there just in time only to realize no, he's too late. Um, but here we have what I would consider to be the first boss fight of the game, with the tank. What did you think of the fight? How did you handle it? I know you can either like destroy the tank, or you can kill the soldiers and take the tank. So which one did you do?
So obviously, it's like early on in this game, your resources are a little bit limited. So my strategy was to keep a distance and shoot, take pot shots at the fuel tanks, and then I believe the first time I fought this, um, I killed the guy in the tank, and then of course something else that happens in this game is that if you kill people, Paz will yell at you over the codec. I can't believe you killed him. He might have been our enemy, but I just can't. um, so, and I'm like, I never killed anybody that didn't shoot at me first. At least for the most part, I stuck to that rule, that I didn't kill anybody unless I really had to. For the most part, I tried to, because, and we'll get into this mechanic and gameplay, but there's a really important mechanic where you can capture people. So I stuck mostly to that. For this boss fight, I tried to distract the soldiers and keep them away from the tank so I could get clear shots at it, and then also like try to put them to sleep and capture them. And especially on once I got the sleeping gas that you can deploy later on, I replayed this to help with grinding and build up my base. Um, and that was these soldiers have higher stats than usual, so it's like these are good ones to capture. What about yourself?
It's interesting because the more that the more games I've played in this series, it feels like I don't know if it's the game design urging a more, action oriented approach, or if it's me just not having as much patience with it. But it feels like in the all the games with Big Boss so far, I've just been much more quick to go guns blazing. Um, so I was just straight up complete murderer in this game. If I was able to sneak around, I'd use my sleepy pistol and put them to sleep and sneak around, or I'd be checking their stats. You have the little analyzer that you can check, um, if they're good in different areas, and pretty much if they're a C or above in the early game, and the later we get, I'm a little bit more picky. Um, but I would put them to sleep and I'd Fulton them out and send them to Mother Base. But no, if the situation gets the least bit sticky, my assault rifle is coming out and I'm just going to town. Um, a
Yeah,
lot of these boss fights, I would have the big assault rifle and the law with me, and I would just resupply the ammo and just until it was done. So this one, I actually ended up getting the tank down to about half health, and then I think the soldiers were just on my nerves, and I decided to take care of all of them before I finished the tank. And then I realized at that point that if I kill all the soldiers, I don't have to destroy the tank. I can just take it with me.
right. Yeah.
Um, so I
And
took a half destroyed tank home.
yeah, because it's like if you're able to salvage the tank, you can use it on later missions, for like the outer ops, I think is what it's called. And then it's like,
Yeah.
you do get like a score at the end of each mission, and there's a whole bunch of things that attribute to what your overall grade is. There's like time, use of force, how many people did you kill, how many people did you capture, which weapons did you use, and that will affect how your mother base grows too. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of layers to this game, but it is kind of, it's like I realized after this boss fight, I was like, is this game not going to have any real like bosses where they have like actual personalities and are people? Is it all just going to be vehicle bosses? And it turns out that's pretty much the case.
Yeah, which honestly, to me, that's kind of a letdown in the grand scheme of like Metal Gear Solid. One of my favorite parts was getting to see each of these antagonists, getting to have a little conversation with them, see what they're about, what their special ability or specialization, whatever is, and how they fit into the larger cog of the machine. Like I keep coming back to Metal Gear Solid 2. I feel like that's the best example of this because like you have Vamp and Fat Man and Fortune and everybody, which I mean Fortune wasn't really a fight, but you get to the more you see them, the more they kind of clue you into like how they work together as one force. But here you didn't really have that. You just had a bunch of AI pods, more or less,
Yeah.
that you just had to rip rip and tear.
Yep. Until it's done. Yeah. So I
But
mean, it was fine. I mean, it just
it was still fun.
it takes a lot
Um,
of patience depending on how your approach is and where your weapons are at. That's for sure. Especially if you're playing alone. Like I hadn't gotten to the point in the game yet where I started trying to get help. I didn't do that
yeah,
until the first quote unquote Metal Gear fight with the pupa.
yeah. And honestly, that would have helped me a lot. But we're well, we're almost there, so we'll talk about the pupa here in a second. Um, so forced to proceed via an alternate route, Snake eventually arrives at Ladera. Evading the enemy soldiers stationed at the old fortress, Snake reached the entrance to their base, hidden within a crater. Infiltrating a garage, Snake identified the truck he had seen earlier from its license plate, though the nukes had already been offloaded. Attempting to locate the nukes within the facility, Snake overheard an argument between wheelchair bound engineer Huey Emmerich and the CIA station chief of Central America, Hot Coldman, which, what a name. Coldman intended to purposefully launch a nuclear warhead using Huey's creation in order to prove its effectiveness in regards to nuclear deterrence and return to his former position as CIA director. Huey, however, was unconvinced and refused to cooperate with his employer any further. The argument turned violent, with Coldman shoving Emmerich down the stairway before departing. Helped back into his wheelchair by Snake, Huey frantically told him of the impending nuclear launch. Rushing to the large, open top hangar, Snake witnessed the removal of a tarp covered device by the unmanned VTOL aircraft, accompanied by a Hind D gunship. A tank notably similar in appearance to the Soviet Shagohod suddenly entered the area and attacked Snake. Equipped with an AI pod on its frame, Huey warned Snake that the vehicle was an unmanned weapon codenamed Pupa. With Huey's advice, Snake was able to defeat the Pupa and put it out of commission. So here we've got the first of the Metal Gear type boss fights.
Yeah.
And I'll go ahead and say this one gave me a lot of trouble. It
Same.
probably was the roughest of the boss fights for me, just because I was kind of trying to get my head around like how boss fights were operating in this game, and I was being stupid, and I saw that the ammo resupply would drop my rank at the end of the mission. So I was refusing to use it. So I was just running out of ammo on all my weapons, and then I was just sitting there waiting for it to kill me pretty
Yeah.
much every time.
No, you have to use the
Um,
weapon drops as like it, especially early on. Like you later on in the game, you might get away with having one or two, depending on if you're playing alone, of course. But I imagine like you know it it doesn't affect your ranking that much, in my opinion.
yeah. I didn't really notice it affecting it too much. Of course, after this mission was whenever I really just started indiscriminately killing anyone that gave me a hard time. So my ranking wasn't really that gonna be that good in the first place. Um, but no, it's one that uh kind of reminded me of the Resident Evil 3 remake.
Yeah.
Um the fight with Nemesis when he's in his like quadrupedal form running around the arena.
Oh
It
yeah,
really
yeah.
reminded me of that boss fight.
Yeah, because the pupa
Um
like drives up the walls and stuff too as it's like singing.
yeah, which I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of that because I found it, especially in my earlier attempts, hard to figure out where it was coming down at. Whenever it would go up the wall, it'd have to come back down somewhere.
Right.
And I found myself getting run over quite a few times.
Yeah.
But I feel like this game, more so than the earlier ones in the series, really requires you to like full attention, full engagement, like almost on a level of like early Dark Souls bosses, in some of these arenas. Because if you're not fully engaged, fully paying attention to what's going on around you, you're gonna get caught slipping and you're gonna get killed. There's just no two ways about it.
Yeah, I think
Um,
as far as like fighting this boss for the first time, I feel like the thing that started helping me out was, I would there are these kind of alcoves with like ladders that when it starts climbing on the walls, if you kind of crouch down there and when it jumps down, it won't be able to hit you, or it'll be a lot less likely. And then of course you can lay flat when it like charges at you, and assuming that it doesn't hit you with its treads, it'll just go right over you.
oh, I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, I
See,
think
I tried camping in one of those alcoves early on too, and it just rammed me from behind.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I I felt like I was like just in a hopeless situation, whatever I did there.
because Huey does give you a couple of tips throughout the fight, and there's also a funny thing because something I didn't notice until I ground through this fight like 10 or 15 more times is that he's watching you from like a window up on one of the walls. So you can like
Yeah.
shoot out the window and he'll be like, "Hey, don't shoot me, shoot the pupa."
That's funny. I didn't know that. Um, but once you get through the pupa fight, um, you've got to break into the AI pod and you can take out boards, which you're on like a 1 minute timer to take out all the boards that you can.
Yeah.
That was something that kind of surprised me because I didn't expect to be, salvaging parts from this enemy that I just defeated.
Oh yeah, and if it's your first
Um,
time, it's like you don't know what the hell what this means. And on top of that, there are times when you hit the pupa that there are numbers popping up with colors next to them and a letter, and you're like, what the hell does that mean? Like, why is there a purple C next to the damage? And then when I hit a different part of it, there's a blue B or whatever it is. And then you find out kind of later, like, oh, these are parts that I can salvage for Metal Gear Zeke later on.
yeah. Um, but anyway, after the fight, Huey later informed Snake that the Pupa was a prototype AI weapon similar to the VTOL aircraft Chrysalis and a treaded type known as Cocoon. Led by a disgraced former DCI, Hot Coldman, the security company operating within Costa Rica known as the Peace Sentinel, had used the Irazu facility to develop the AI weapons frames. The nukes that Snake had been pursuing were now loaded onto the machine that was airlifted from the facility, codenamed Peace Walker. The bipedal machine was a mobile, unmanned nuclear platform and the end result of the Peace Sentinel's AI research. The aim of the Peace Walker project was to develop an automated, fail deadly uh, nuclear launch system, stealth shielded from radar and satellites to evade any preemptive strike. Its purpose was to launch a retaliatory strike at an appropriate target without human input in the event of a nuclear attack, overcoming the inherent uncertainty in human decision making. Huey had proposed that the weapon would have a bipedal design in order to traverse the difficult terrain of Central America, where several units were to be deployed. Snake then realized that Peace Walker was the El Basilisco that Chico had witnessed, and that Peace Walker was likely based on the concept of a Metal Gear, which was described to him by Grannon 10 years ago. Um, which I feel like this is probably the best place to stop and talk about it. I had mentioned to you previously about Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Yeah.
Were you able to look anything up about that?
Just a handful of clips. I've not really had the time to deep dive into it, but I know like obviously there's mechs involved and it's a anime.
Yeah. So the city that it's set in, you find out later on in the series that it's protected by three AI pillars that are roughly modeled on people's um, brains, basically, uh, their personalities and stuff, and they are the ones that make all the decisions within the city. So, like any defensive measures that are taken, the three AIs have to get together, and if two out of the three of them, or three out of the three of them, decide, like agree on a course of action, that's the course that they take. So whenever they went into the description of this, and especially later on in Doctor Strange Love's lab, I really was getting like a sense of inspiration from Neon Genesis Evangelion. Um, and because there are a lot of like similarities between that concept and this concept that they're talking about here. So I just thought it's something interesting to point out. If you're listening at home, uh, check out Neon Genesis Evangelion. It's really cool anime. I love it. That's my plug.
Yeah,
um,
and it's like it's interesting because this cutscene with Huey really sets up his and Coldman's philosophy of having that basically we want our country to have the bigger stick so nobody messes with us, and Huey is fine with making the stick as long as it's not misused, and of course having the AI will remove potential human error or in Coldman's case the moral qualms of somebody deciding I don't want to destroy a whole nother country in addition to letting ours go too. Um, and of course, Coleman takes it a step further and saying that, well, we have this deterrent, but we have to show people that it works. So we're going to stage this fake event where we have to quote unquote retaliate just to show that we can. Like we have to show that we're the most powerful players in town, so that way people don't mess with us.
and something really interesting too that I just thought of. I don't know if you've heard of during the Cold War. I believe it was during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Somebody, I forget which side it was on, got an alert of a nuclear weapon being deployed, and they were supposed to send a retaliatory strike. And the person that was there to push the button, they hesitated and didn't want to do it, and the commander was like adamant that they needed to just send the retaliatory strike, and it turned out to be a false alarm.
Yep. Yeah, I'm very
So
familiar with
the
that story.
Yeah, so the fact that there was a human there to hesitate saved potentially the world from a nuclear holocaust.
Or right,
And
exactly.
I wonder if they had that in mind with this setup of, there's no hesitation, just as soon as they see something on the radar, boom, they send it out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I believe it was a Russian sub. Obviously, I can't recall the gentleman's name, but you know, it there was like it has to go through like a 3 to 4 man approval process, and he was the last one to make the call and decide, no, we need to wait. And there's a really great movie that's inspired by this event with Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington and Viggo Mortensen, where it's the same situation where Gene Hackman thinks that a foreign country is launching nukes at the U.S. and Denzel's like, well, we only got half the message. Maybe we should wait for the other half to come through. So I forget. I think it's called Crimson Dawn or something like that. Great movie. So it also wouldn't
Right.
surprise
Yeah.
me if it came out in the early to mid '90s, I think. So it wouldn't surprise me if Kojima was a fan of that film, as well as like obviously alluding to the real historical context as well.
Yeah. It's uh, like I said, I just thought of that while we were discussing this. So it'd be interesting to kind of see if there were any parallels, parallel thinking there. Um, but anyway, there's a lot of conversations to be had there about AIs making decisions for humans, and especially on like a larger governmental or military scale. But unfortunately, that's almost the world we're living in now. So um, anyway, moving on with Metal Gear. Though initially believing in the maintenance of peace through nuclear deterrence, Huey had been unwilling to allow Coldman to demonstrate the weapon's power by carrying out an actual nuclear strike. Demanding to know where the nukes were headed, Snake was told that they had been taken to the border and that the final test was to take place in 5 days. Huey suggested that uh, Snake locate another of Peace Walker's AI researchers, Dr. Strangelove, who had created the weapon's high-level decision-making AI, the Mammal Pod. Huey then considered abandoning his research, though Snake convinced him to join Outer Heaven instead, as part of the MSF's R&D team aboard Mother Base. Agreeing to this, Huey speculated that with enough resources, the MSF could build their own bipedal mech to help thwart the Peace Walker project. Um, so on November 19th, Snake set out for the AI facility, avoiding the heightened security in Selva de la Leche, which I'm going to go ahead and apologize for any native Spanish speakers listening. I'm sure butchering every single one of these names, places, all of it. Uh, I'm sorry. I'm just a dumb American gushing about a video game.
Same. So I took 2 years of Spanish, and that was like almost 15 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Though I have been to Costa Rica, a very beautiful country.
Yeah, or as Paz says it, Costa Rica. I just love the way
um,
she says the name of the country.
yeah. Um, let's see. A Hind A, accompanied by several troops, were waiting for Snake in the area, forcing him to neutralize them all. Emerging victorious, Snake continued on to Selva de la Muerte, bypassing more security until he eventually reached the ruinous de uh, Xochiquetzal, I believe. While traveling through the ruins, Snake found a distressed woman resting by a tree who became startled by his sudden appearance. Snake reassured the French woman, an ornithologist named Cecile Cosima Camenda, Cecile, that he would not harm her and offered her a mate. Having visited Costa Rica a week earlier to observe the native Quetzal, Cecile had accidentally recorded the voices of two women conducting a test exercise with her portable cassette player. She had subsequently been captured by armed soldiers, then blindfolded and imprisoned, though she was well cared for by one of the women she had previously overheard. Stealing an ID card, she had recently escaped into the jungle before succumbing to exhaustion, barefoot and with no supplies. Realizing that she must be Paz's lost friend, whose tape was in the MSF's possession, Snake had her transported back to Mother Base via Fulton Recovery, where she could either stay and help or return home. Um, Now this was one point in the game, what we're coming up to, where you had to do some backtracking to find where the Quetzals were singing and locate the soldier in the orange jacket. Frankly, it was I'm not a big fan of backtracking in games. So this part was a bit frustrating for me personally, especially because I put it down after that conversation one night and picked it up a couple of days later and forgot what the Quetzal sounded like. So I was just going through every area, checking every soldier, being like, "All right, do you have an orange jacket? Do you have an orange jacket?" No, go to the next area. Did you experience any frustration or anything with this part?
I I think I actually kind of enjoyed it. Although it's like the bird thing seems kind of unnecessary because the guy in the orange jacket sticks out like a sore thumb, especially in the jungle. Um,
Oh yeah. Well, by the time I actually found him, I was like, "Oh, there you are. If I just, blazed through this, I would have found you." But I was hung up on the, "All right, you got to hear the Quetzal singing," and I was like, "Oh my gosh."
yeah, and she demonstrate. I don't. How much of the tapes did you listen to? Just out of curiosity. Do you have a ballpark?
Not very many
Okay.
at all.
Um, and so it's like she demonstrates a lot of the bird calls through that as well. Um, so again, I don't think the bird thing ended up being all that useful. It was just kind of a character quirk for her. But it kind of felt like the bomb mission in Metal Gear Solid 2, where it's like, okay, let's break up
Yeah.
the gameplay a little bit and add like this different side quest.
Now for me, the bomb mission worked a bit better in my opinion because it got you out on all the struts. I took that time to like go to all the nodes and activate the map on all the different struts. So it got you exploring a place that you've not been to yet in most of the cases. Whereas this one you'd already been through the jungle path once and now you're going back down and back up. So that's kind of the difference that I see in it. Um, which I mean, there's nothing objectively wrong with it. It's just a point of, you know, a small point of frustration that I had in
Yeah.
this moment of the game.
And speaking back on Cecile real quick, I don't know if you have this on our notes, but I just learned this because somebody in the chat shared this, and I went ahead and fact checked it. Apparently, Cecile is based off a real person who was a manager at Konami, the France division, and you can find
Okay.
her Wikipedia page. They based the name and her appearance. Like, I mean, there's a picture on the Wikipedia of her side by side with the game character and in real life, and they look just alike. Um, doesn't look like she voiced the character or anything. But yeah, she was a former communications manager of Konami, as well as a manager and founder of the PR group. She holds dual citizenship in both France and Britain. I thought that's a really interesting but random factoid.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at the picture now. That is kind of crazy. Well, I mean, we all know that Kojima likes to blur the line between real life and the games he's making. So that's not a huge surprise, but that is a really cool little fact that I had absolutely no idea about.
I mean, Kojima himself is in this game as well.
That
I don't know if you were aware of that.
he's also in. I'm not sure if he's in Ground Zeroes. But I know he's in Phantom Pain as
Okay,
well.
that doesn't
So that's
surprise me.
he's got a track record for including real people into his games. Um, oh, which one was it? Was it Death Stranding had Conan O'Brien in it?
Yeah, Conan O'Brien, and
So
obviously there was Guillermo del Toro and Norman Reedus, but Conan was definitely the straight up. Oh, this is a fun little cameo.
yeah, but it's cool to see him doing this stuff, all the way back here. Um, Anyway, moving on with the story. Proceeding to the AI facility, which was hidden within an ancient Mayan temple, Snake discovered that the ID card given to him by Huey would not give him access. He then contacted Cecile back at Mother Base, who told him of an orange jacketed guard that had confiscated her own stolen ID card during her escape attempt, stationed in an area in which she heard the Quetzals singing. Cecile helped Snake to identify the guard and secure the card. Later, Miller informed Snake that the tape back at Mother Base had indeed belonged to Cecile, but discovered that she had never even met Paz before. Choosing to settle the matter later, Snake gained access to the grounds of the research facility where he encountered a white Andalusian horse, the same breed as that which had belonged to the boss. Confronted by a woman in a red coat and sunglasses, Snake correctly identified her as Dr. Strangelove, who accused him of coming to destroy her research. Strangelove had a great deal of resentment towards Snake due to his assassination of the boss 10 years earlier. She had been waiting to meet her killer, who had chosen loyalty to a shadowy country over the mentor who had made him who he was. Feeling abandoned after the boss's death, Strangelove was desperate to learn the answers from the woman she had once loved, and she had attempted to bring back to life in the form of the AI she was currently developing. Though he remained suspicious of her intentions, Snake was intrigued by her knowledge of the boss and followed her into the lab. There he was presented with the cylindrical, shell encased AI, the Mammal Pod. In return for her participation in the Peace Walker project, Strangelove had demanded that the CIA grant her access to all information regarding the boss, her personal history, military records, physiological data, correspondence, files on every single operation she had participated in, every decision she had made, and every emotion she had felt during her lifetime. Believing the boss to be the finest rational mind with which to model the mad based AI, Strangelove knew that it would be capable of selecting the most suitable targets for nuclear retaliation, however painful the decision might be. However, her true goal was to clear the boss's name by learning why the legendary hero was forced to betray her country and why she had been killed by her most beloved disciple. Snake denied wanting to know the boss's last will, calling her a traitor, to which Strangelove challenged him to destroy the AI and extinguish her noble soul once more. Beckoned by the voice of the boss, Snake entered the AI pod, though he was unable to destroy it due to the AI's haunting words, forcing him to recall his past before passing out. Which this was the part in the motion comic cutscenes that gave me the most trouble that I had to retry over and over was the part where he's kind of remembering the boss's final moments and the fight that he had with her
Yeah,
in the field. Um,
yeah. I kind of wish. I thought about this too. I wish there was a. I wish there was an opt out option. Um,
yeah,
and because I love how this is animated, but it's hard to appreciate it when you're like trying to be like, okay, when's the next prompt coming up? Um, so it would be nice that, or at the very least, when you play through the chapter again, it gives you the option to not do the QTEs. Like maybe once you've completed that chapter, you don't have to do the QTEs anymore. And maybe that's something that they'll add for the Master Collection Volume 2 version is an opt out option. I think um, that would be smart because it's like it's one of my favorite scenes in this game because I love the recreation of that iconic fight in Metal Gear Solid 3.
yeah, I agree with you. Something like I don't know if you played the PlayStation Spider-Man games, but they've got an option in the settings where you can auto-complete QTEs. Um, my kids are playing that game, and I clicked that on for them. That way, they wouldn't, have to be in the middle of some big cinematic and have to worry about hitting the button at the right time when they're engrossed in the story. Like I kind of wish was the case in this because um, the Metal Gear cutscenes, the way that Kojima tells his stories, it really brings you in to every word that's being said. And if you give yourself over to the experience, you're going to be completely engrossed, and then you're going to see a button pop up and you're going to be like, "Oh crap." And then that takes you out of the moment.
Yeah, yeah, and
So
I think again I like the QTs that are optional and like three, and the ones that are
yeah.
hidden too. Like I think those are fine because if you choose not to do them, it doesn't really affect what's going on.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Maybe we'll see something like that in the master collection. Um though I wouldn't really hold my breath for it. It doesn't, based on volume 1, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of maintenance in carrying these experiences over. It just seems like it's more,
It
all
could
right,
be
we've
something
got
that they add
we
later
got the
down.
HD version.
Right. It could be something they add later on because I know there's stuff that they added to the Master Collection Volume One a little bit further after its release. So who knows?
Yeah, there's hope. Um but back to the story at hand. Awakening on the AI facility grounds, Snake saw a hind carrying away the AI pod. The Chrysalis AI weapon then emerges from behind the temple, and Snake's forced to destroy the aircraft. Shortly thereafter, Miller contacted him to confirm the location of Peace Walker's final testing area. Identified with Huey's help, an underground base disguised as a rock quarry 15 miles to the north of the lab. Accused of being unable to come to terms with his past regarding the boss, Snake swore to Miller that he would destroy the AI upon their next encounter. Due to Peace Walker's imminent completion, he also began to doubt the boss's real intentions during Operation Snake Eater, due to Strangelove having disbelieved his account of the mission's debriefing. Um, Now the Chrysalis, I don't know if there's much to be said as we go on through these mech fights one after another, that we can't say for all the ones before it. Um, but what do you think about the Chrysalis fight? It was in the air versus on the ground. Um,
Right. And again, this one has a very important part for Zeke, but you wouldn't know that unless you use a guide like the railgun. You got to make sure that you don't damage it too much, so that way you can reuse it. But basically, yeah, you're trying to damage it until it's forced to land and regroup itself. Um, but I mean, it's okay. Like it's another one of those fights that's definitely easier with with help. But I felt like I had an easier time taking this one on versus the pupa, and it could have just been, by that time I'd gotten used to the gameplay loop.
yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at. I did think it was cool. It seemed like it took notes from the Hind boss fight in Metal Gear Solid One, where it kind of go behind the temple and like loop out in like kind of a further out circle around the arena before coming back in. But I mean, really, once you go through the mech fights, there's not a whole lot differentiating them from one another. It's just point and shoot the big AI machine.
Yeah, yeah, and
Um,
you wanna hit the big red cylinder with the eye on it, and for this one, I think your best friend is the lock on rocket.
yeah, I actually didn't use that. I used my law and the little machine gun. That's what I used for anytime there was like a, boss fight with like a tank, helicopter, mech, any of it. I would put on the law and the big, I can't remember what that gun was called, but the heavier machine gun. Um, which that's probably more habit than anything, because that's what I would do with the Phantom Pain whenever I played that 11 years ago now. That was always my go-to then, so I guess it's just force of habit more than anything.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah,
But
all right, boss fight, I guess.
yeah, I kind of feel like it's just diminishing returns on them as the story progresses on, because like the pupa fight was, it was new, it was exciting, it was you know, different in a lot of ways from what we've seen previously in the boss fights, like in the previous games. But then it's kind of just more of the same as it progresses onward. Um, so moving past the chrysalis, using the boss's old horse, Snake traveled to the quarry on November 21st. Abandoning the horse, Snake reached the mining pit where he observed Peace Walker itself descending via cargo elevator into the underground base for final testing. As he made his approach, Snake was spotted by a kidnapper drone, triggering an alert that sent Peace Sentinel troops out to kill him. After the entire unit was neutralized, the Cocoon AI weapon then entered the pit to finish Snake off, forcing Snake to destroy the gargantuan attack craft. Shrapnel from Cocoon's destruction damages a nearby electronic door, uh, allowing Snake access to the base. Um, Now, question for you: Is it just you, or is it just me, or do you also feel like these big fights are coming boom, 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 boom as you go through?
Yeah, it feels like it's ramping up, and I will say, I think this one is actually my favorite quote unquote boss fight in the game because
Mhm.
it's like a building, and it's huge, and I love the fact it reminded me of Shadow of the Colossus because you have to kind of climb onto it at a certain point.
Yeah.
And especially like when you're playing with like three other people and you're all like trying to coordinate, and one person is shooting one side, the other person shooting something else, and then you're trying to get it to drop the ladder, and then the ladder does eventually drop, and then it's like you see all four of you just climbing up the ladder trying to get up to where the pupa pod's at. So for me, even when I tried to play it solo, I was like, okay, this is really cool because it's again kind of scratching that Shadow of the Colossus itch, and the fact that it's like almost like it's like this basically a building on wheels is also ridiculously awesome.
See, I feel like I missed out on a lot of the appeal to Peace Walker not being able to play on multiplayer. For those at home listening, I played on the Xbox, which I mentioned earlier. I don't have Xbox Live or Game Pass or anything like that. So I wasn't able to actually get online and play with other people. But it sounds like that really elevated the experience,
I think
which
so. I think I'd be singing a different tune if I didn't have help for some of these boss fights.
hopefully, whenever Master Collection Volume 2 drops, I'll be able to hop in. Maybe not immediately, maybe here like in a few months or a year or so, hop back into Peace Walker and get to play it online with some friends, and maybe I'll have a different experience. But yeah, it so I've not actually played Shadow of the Colossus.
Oh, okay, but you know what it
I've
is.
yeah, I've like I remember watching a playthrough, and I think the was it the final boss that's kind of similar to this. You got to climb on the
It's
different
basically a giant
shells of the
building. Yeah.
yeah. That's one that always kind of interested me, but I I got it years ago whenever the Blue Point did the remake. And it's one of those, it's just, I tried to play it a couple of times and it's just never the right place, never the right time to play it. So maybe after this I need to go back and give it a second chance. Um Anyways, after the cocoon, um reaching the Peace Walker's hangar, uh, he saw Strangelove's team asking or taking a break from preparing the unit and slipped through to the mammal pod, then interrogated the boss AI about Operation Snake Eater. But unable to gain any answers from it, he prepared to destroy it. The AI pod suddenly opens up with Strangelove, Coldman, and several troops surrounding him. Coldman explained that the deployment of Peace Walker was part of a plan to reestablish U.S. superiority that had faded in the aftermath of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the various arms control treaties established ever since. Coldman also admitted to being the mastermind of Operation Snake Eater and implied that he had been relocated to Central America as a result. Seeing an opportunity to attack, Snake engaged several of the guards in CQC, grabbing Strangelove's ID card in the confusion before being subdued. Snake later awakened in a prison cell where he was tortured by Strangelove on whether the boss had truly died for her country or if she was a traitor. Snake's refusal to talk, however, gave her the clue she needed to complete the mammal pod's programming. After falling unconscious, Snake came to in a cell and used Strangelove's ID card to free himself. Recovering his gear, Miller informed Snake that he had been unable to contact Paz and that she and Galvez were not at the school either. Suspecting that Coleman may be behind her disappearance, Snake returned to Peace Walker's hangar, where his suspicions were proven correct upon encountering said station chief and a captured Paz. Um, Real quick after that paragraph, um, I feel like at this point they have a checklist in Koji Pro headquarters.
Yep.
Um, and on that checklist is different things that every Metal Gear game has to have. And on the top of that would be main protagonist is imprisoned and tortured.
This is by far, I don't know if how difficult it was for you, but this was by far the worst one. Like they got easier after Metal Gear Solid, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
they just made it 10 times harder. So was it hard for you, or is it just me?
No, it which I had a difficult time with it in Metal Gear Solid. Uh, Notoriously, I don't remember if I mentioned it in our episode, but I actually had to I saved before the torture sequence because I knew it was coming, and I failed. Gosh, I don't even know how many times. But I ended up just rolling with the Meryl is dead part before finally replaying and beating it. So it was. I don't know if I'd say it's on that level, but it's definitely one of the more difficult ones in the series so far.
And not to sound like a grandpa, but there was also because the PS3 controller I have is like a knockoff, so I also wondered
Yeah.
if that was the issue. Because there were times in Peace Walker where even just like out in like the regular game, I would try to draw my gun and nothing would happen, and then I'd press like the button a little bit harder, and it would happen. And it didn't happen a lot. Like it was every now and then, but often enough to be noticeable. And I was like, maybe that was what made it even more difficult. But even when I used like my ring, like I did with Metal Gear Solid, it was still near impossible. But eventually, like after probably about 10 tries, I did eventually get it.
I wonder I wonder if we, try it on the Master Collection where you have a different like on a different console, different controller, if you'd have an easier time with it. I don't know if I'd say it was that difficult for me. Um but it may part of it could have been your controller. I genuinely don't know.
Yes, I
Um
had that thought, and I might even mentioned it when I was streaming the game. I was like, I think something might be wrong with my controller, but I don't. It's like I've heard that excuse where, you know, I've played Mario Kart with the kids, and one of them when they're losing, they'll be like, "Oh, my Joy Cons have drift," but their Joy Cons will be brand new, and it's like, no, no, buddy, you're just having a tough time with this race.
yeah. Um but no, that's an interesting thought. I'd be interested to see if you like would replay the game on the Master Collection if you have the same kind of trouble.
Well, yeah, we'll
Um,
see.
but anyway, after that, Coldman proudly tells Snake of the mammal pod's completion thanks to his interrogation at the hands of Strangelove. He then revealed that Peace Walker's first target would be MSF's mother base in the offshore area of the Caribbean. The trade winds would then scatter the nuclear fallout all throughout the region, causing fish and crops to die out, leaving many free hands to contribute to Peace Walker's mass production. Before the test, Coleman intended to first demonstrate to the White House Peace Walker's all terrain capabilities by having it travel the Caribbean coast on its own, traversing both communist and guerrilla territory. Coleman then departed with pause, with Snake becoming distracted by Peace Walker's sudden activation, which began to ascend aboard the cargo elevator to the mining pit above. Climbing out of an emergency escape hatch above ground, Snake immediately fired upon Peace Walker, whereupon the mammal pod entered self defense mode and retaliated. The bipedal Peace Walker then opened up with its similar weapons, launchers, and flamethrowers. After a grueling fight, Snake dealt sufficient damage to the machine to cause its momentary collapse to the ground, and its AI began behaving erratically. Coleman's Hind D then fired a few rounds at the mammal pod, causing Peace Walker to enter a quadrupedal formation and began following the gunship across the mountainous forests. With the boss's horse returning to its aid, Snake gave chase to Peace Walker, evading its missile attacks as trees collapsed all around them. However, as Peace Walker approached the Nicaraguan border, the Snake's horse lost its footing on the steep slopes. Though Snake was relatively unscathed, the horse was gravely wounded and he was forced to shoot the animal dead. Scaling the hillside himself, Snake watched helplessly as Peace Walker crossed the Rio San Juan. Um, Now, do you want to talk about the different phases of Peace Walker as we go by them, or do you just want to talk about all of them kind of at the end?
I think it'd be good to talk about all of them at the end. There is one point I wanted to make about the horse. This was probably my favorite QTE. Like I thought the horse riding stuff was really really cool, especially in the comic stuff. And
Yeah,
it makes me want a Metal Gear Solid 6 even more, where we played the boss during what was she served in World War II, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because it's just like I, I really want a Metal Gear Solid game where we ride a horse. I feel like that would be really sweet, and I don't and I feel like this is as close as we've gotten so far. Um, so it's like it would be cool again to not only experience that but also to experience her unit. But going back to this cutscene, I think it's also like really tragic because he's kind of killing off the last true living part of the boss, because she clearly had a bond with this horse, and it's just like it's so sad that he had to put down this animal that was kind of the last living link besides him to the boss.
It's really interesting, as you kind of see the story of Big Boss go on. He's slowly having to kill his past, essentially, killing parts of himself that he wasn't willing to let go of to properly take on the title of Big Boss. Because he won't even let them call him Big Boss. He's like, it's just Snake. So until he, you know, goes down the path far enough to accept that title. It I love the way that they kind of slowly take you down this path of, I don't want to say Snake losing himself, but Snake kind of cutting himself off from the things that he cared about before MSF and Mother Base, and really just kind of being like, okay, this is the person that I have to be, so this is the person I'm going to become.
Yeah, and it feels like it's inevitable, and even the games kind of like hint at that whenever Big Boss dies in this game or Metal Gear Solid 3. There, it's a time paradox, right? Because it's meant to happen, and here's our obligatory George Lucas reference. It's like watching the prequels, and when you meet Anakin as this little boy, this little innocent boy, and you're like, this is gonna become one of the greatest villains ever, and it's so tragic to watch his downfall. Say what you want about some of the dialogue and writing, it is very tragic to watch that downfall through the three movies, and then obviously the Clone Wars as well.
Yeah, and especially seeing him go from this kind of more green soldier in 3, starting at a similar point where Solid Snake started, and now seeing how differently the paths that each of them go down are. um it's really interesting to kind of see the parallels and the contrast between those two characters, despite having pretty much identical DNA. how different decisions, like how different their decisions they're making are in their life.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
but no, and you'll see more of that as we go on in Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain as well. But it makes me even more interested now, having played Peace Walker, to see how Solid Snake's story ends in Metal Gear Solid 4. Because everything that we're playing past this point, Snake's story is done. That's all in the history books. And so they're making all of this with that endpoint in mind.
Right.
Um, so I'm excited. The more we play these games, the more excited I am to play 4 finally, which we'll be doing here in just a few months.
Yep.
So,
It won't be too long now.
all right. Getting back into it. By kidnapping the MSF's client, Coleman hoped to prevent the group's interference with Peace Walker, speculating that he was aware of her connection to the KGB via Galvez. Snake and Miller assumed he would also interrogate her on the Soviets' plans to disrupt the weapon. Meanwhile, Amanda and her Nicaraguan compass of the guerrilla popular uh, Prolong- Prolongada track Peace Walker towards a U.S. military supply base on the southeastern shore of Lago Cocibolca. To cross the border, Amanda told Snake of a route that the FSLN used to cross by boat and arranged an introduction with the captain. With information provided by Huey, the MSF realized that Peace Walker would launch its nuke from the U.S. base following 2 days of preparation, which would coincide with the upcoming U.S. Soviet SALT II talks with Vladivostok. Wondering whether Coldman planned to disrupt the negotiations or use it as a bargaining chip, the MSF made preparations to infiltrate the base and prevent the launch. And we've gone this far, and I just realized we have not even touched on Huey as a character at all.
I mean, we
Um,
briefly talked about the dialogue between him and Snake, and I guess
yeah, what do you think of Huey, knowing his connection later on, and the things that you heard about Huey from Otacon and 2? What do you think about actually getting to meet this character?
uh, he's okay. I didn't feel like a strong connection to him. It felt this was like probably the one point. Like I mean, obviously they have to introduce him because he's an important part of the story, and they've alluded to Huey's dad being an important part of the Metal Gear project, or an important piece. Um, and then it's like it also kind of shows like why he wasn't around much for Otacon's childhood. And seeing again, not too similar from Big Boss and Solid Snake, the similars but also differences between the two characters of Otacon and Huey. Um, and there's even a part in the cutscene where, like, after they get done talking, where they're like walking towards the helicopter, where Huey's like looking at Big Boss and is like, you know what, this feels kind of familiar. You getting a sense of deja vu at all, even though this takes place in the past. And Big
Yeah,
Boss is like, you know what, you're kind of right. It just feels somewhat oddly familiar. Uh, and it's and this isn't the first time that the series has played with something that has happened before will inevitably happen again. Like Metal Gear Solid 2 played, that was like the theme baked into that game. Um, but I don't know. I think Huey is okay as a character. I didn't. Obviously, I think Otacon is far and away superior, and I really love his relationship with Snake. How they're almost kind of like op- opposites, but also brothers at the same time. Whereas Huey feels more like a tool for Big Boss, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. Otacon, he is not. That's for sure. I feel like the fact that Otacon and Snake were able to bounce off of each other in a way that, they challenged each other and helped each other in their own ways. Whereas, like you said, Big Boss is using Huey more as like a means to an end, um, which I think as you continue on Big Boss's story, excuse me, you're gonna feel that more, the dissonance between the relationship that these two have and that their sons will have eventually, which isn't it's crazy to me because, my first introduction to Metal Gear Solid was not, Otacon and Snake, it was Huey and Big Boss. So whenever, Hal and Snake, met up and had such a good rapport and, um, you know, Otacon is just so endearing as a character. You just can't help but love him, I feel like. Um, and that quality is not present with Huey as much.
No.
Which we'll be able to talk more about their relationship as it evolves in the Phantom Pain. But that's just one thing I wanted to touch on, kind of the character of Huey, because I realized we kind of blazed past him and didn't really mention him a whole lot.
Yeah, and I think that also
Um,
might be a testament within itself to Huey's he's kind of just there. Like he's not like
yeah,
bad or anything like that. And obviously the voice actor's terrific. Again, this game, all these games so far, all the voice acting across the board has been incredible. Um, and I think that it also kind of shows that Big Boss doesn't really have any friends, whereas Solid Snake does. Um, I mean, I guess the only two people I could really think that might be Big Boss's friends would be Cause, and that's also even a big maybe. Um, and then Chico, who who is like I guess a pseudo son figure to him, is really the only friend he has in the game. If you're gonna take Cause out of the equation,
yeah. Funnily enough, I think you're right. He does really have the closest relationship with Chico out of anyone
right?
in this game.
Like just obviously to
Which I,
some extent he cares about everybody at Mother Base, but I don't think that it's I don't know. It's kind of hard to
it's
explain like what that
it's not
is.
like a friendship. I feel like it's more of like, okay, you're under my roof. I have to take care of you. But it's not a friendship. They're not gonna go like talk about whatever movies they just saw or whatever. Um, and with Kaz, it even feels like he treats him more as like an advisor than as a friend.
Right.
Um, which obviously we don't get to see behind the curtain like what their day to day in Mother Base is like, but it feels like he respects Kaz and he obviously has a lot of authority within the MSF, but as far as a personal friend, it doesn't seem like he has any at all. It outside of Chico, like you said, which that really goes into what I was saying about how you know he seems to be more closed off and like he almost I don't want to say like he's afraid of repeating past mistakes, but the last person that he deeply cared for, he had to put a bullet through.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know how willing I would be to make those close connections with more people after having to do something like that.
Yeah. Exactly. That's a good point.
But continuing on November 23rd, Snake traveled to Nicaragua by gondola, heading west of the river until he reached the northern bank and was assisted by a guide to get close to the U.S. missile base. Snake then disguised himself as a crate and managed to hitch a ride in the back of a cargo truck through the back gate. Miller informed Snake of an airfield on the other end of the base, which was where Peace Walker would launch, along with a communication tower ahead of him where it would be controlled from. Snake briefly considered calling an evacuation of Mother Base, which Amanda and the her FSLN unit had already done, though the rest of the MSF decided to stay behind, confident that Snake would prevent the launch. However, Miller decided to prepare a backup unit to aid him just in case. Commencing his infiltration, Snake discovered kidnapper drones and Soviet soldiers patrolling the American base and was mystified by their presence. Entering a security recording room, Snake found Paz on one of the video monitors, who informed him that Coldman was headed for the comm tower in order to input the final data for Peace Walker's launch. Sirens suddenly sounded throughout the base, and Snake was forced to fight his way to the comm tower, with Miller and the MSF heading to Nicaragua to aid him via a squadron of helicopters and gunboats. Reaching the tower, Snake neutralized a Hind D and an entire enemy unit that was protecting the entrance before proceeding inside. Inside the comm tower, Snake encountered Coldman and Paz, but was quickly surrounded by dozens of Soviet soldiers. Coldman proclaimed that Snake was too late, having already input false data regarding the Soviet nuclear attack on the United States mainland. Since Peace Walker was solely a deterrent, it was incapable of commencing a preemptive nuclear strike, so it was necessary to trick Peace Walker's AI into retaliating to a perceived threat which would select an optimal target from a predefined list. The false data had also been reverse engineered to have Peace Walker inevitably choose Mother Base as its target. Coldman believed that Peace Walker would be the first and last nuclear retaliation of the Cold War, and that it would be the only way to ever come close to true peace. As he prepared to input the confirmation code via a briefcase handcuffed to his arm, Snake pointed his rifle towards him, ignoring the surrounding soldiers until they were interrupted by the appearance of Professor Galvez. Snake and Paws both realized that Galvez's real name, uh, Valdemir Alex Alexandrovich Zadornov, had been in league with Kolbin all along. However, Zadornov then announced a successful occupation of the base by his troops, and the soldiers present subsequently pointed their weapons towards Coldman. Having previously supplied technology to the Peace Sentinels in exchange for land and soldiers, Zadornov had planned to take Peace Walker for himself and launch a nuclear strike at Cuba instead. A, a nuclear weapon launched from a United States missile base located in a country with a pro American regime towards one of the Soviet Union's greatest allies would cause anti American sentiment to spread throughout Central America, splitting North and South America apart and bringing the Soviets one step closer to winning the Cold War. Goldman was outraged at Zadornov's betrayal. Zadornov then placed his gun into Paz's hands and ordered her to shoot Coldman, reminding her of the torture she had suffered at the supply facility. Coldman apologized to her, and Paz could not bring herself to fire at him. Grabbing Paz's hand, Zadornov pulled the trigger of the gun and shot Coldman twice in the chest, though he deliberately avoided the killing blow. Zadornov then forced him to place his red diskette into a nuclear launch briefcase and ordered Strangelove to change Peace Walker's target to Cuba, threatening to crush her beloved should she resist. Finally, turning to Snake, Zadornov remarked that he was a true commandant, having taken a ragtag group of rebels and children and turned them into a formidable army, providing additional momentum to the revolution in Nicaragua. His death at the CIA's hands, similar to Che Guevara before him, would strengthen the Sandinistas' resolve in overthrowing the pro American regime, and with the nuclear launch at Cuba being the last straw. After an announcement that the mammal pod's data entry had been completed, Zadornov told Snake that he would die just like the boss did, as an eternal fraud. However, before he could execute Snake, both the MSF and FSLN stormed into the control room and took out the Soviet soldiers. Amanda then forced Adornoff onto his knees, proclaiming that Sandinistas would no longer be puppets for the KGB and that they would win their own victory, having accomplished their goal and returning to Nicaragua with Snake's help. The Sandinistas began to chant Vic Boss in celebration. Soon afterwards, the MSF began their return to Mother Base with Zadornov and an injured Coldman in their custody, telling Miller that he would catch up later after he disposed of the boss AI. Snake was confronted by Strangelove She informed him that she had only wished to learn the truth about the boss by bringing her back as an AI, and that he would speak with it, and that he should speak with it to learn of it himself. She also offered her apologies for having tortured Snake earlier and thanked him for eliminating the Peace Sentinels. Meanwhile, Paz cried aboard an MSF chopper due to her ordeal at the base, with Miller remarking that aiming a weapon alone does not make it a deterrent. He also reminded Paz of her role as an angel of peace, and that she should leave the guns to MSF, their mission in Costa Rica now complete. However, Coldman, despite dying from blood loss, was able to input a code into the nuclear briefcase before Miller could stop him, laughing as he did so. As a result, Peace Walker became active, preparing for the nuclear launch at Cuba, with Coldman telling the group that he input false data would also be relayed to NORAD. Miller quickly informed Snake of this development since the MSF were unable to block the MLF signal. Since the false data was designed to be indistinguishable from that of a real Soviet attack, Washington would be forced to consider nuclear retaliation, though Coldman was confident they would be unable to do so due to human nature. Peace Walker's AI, however, would have no qualms regarding a retaliatory strike, thus proving its effectiveness as a perfect deterrent. With the U.S. President and Vice President in absence due to the SALT II talks, the legislative branch would be granted nuclear launch authority. More specifically, the Speaker. Believing the false data to be reliable, NORAD initiated DEFCON 3 and contacted SAC to prepare for an emergency meeting. Huey hacking into Peace Walker's data transmission relayed these developments to the MSF, though Coldman remained convinced that Washington would order no retaliation. Miller demanded that he stop Peace Walker since only he knew of the abort code, but Coldman refused. Attempting to make the V for victory sign, Coldman exclaimed the word peace before finally passing away. Snake immediately set out to destroy Peace Walker to both prevent the nuclear launch and stop the false data transmission. After a lengthy battle, Peace Walker's drive system was damaged and the launch was prevented, though the data uplinks still remained intact. Huey then informed Snake that the BMEWS were continuing to track the false targets on radar and that the DSP satellite status was green. Meanwhile, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a representative of the Secretary of Defense, and various members of Congress arrived at the NMCC. A NORAD operator confirmed from the data that there were 1,500 ICBMs crossing the North Pole and were targeting the West Coast, commanding that they go to DEFCON 2 and prepare launching ICBMs towards the Soviet Union. Gosh, there are a lot of acronyms.
That's the
As a
military
fully
for
auto-
you.
yeah, as a fully autonomous system, Peace Walker's command authorities were located inside the mammal pod. Unlike the other AI weapons Snake had fought, mammal pod's outer casing was also designed to be as strong as a nuclear bomb shelter, making his weapons ineffective. Huey then pointed out that sinking Peace Walker into the nearby lake may disrupt the sensitive electronics of the AI, since the pressure since the pressure at his depths could cause water to penetrate the damaged frame. However, Miller realized it would be impossible to lift the 500-ton behemoth. Back at the ECR HQ, the members were unable to contact the president, and after much frantic argument, they agreed on nuclear retaliation. Realizing that Coleman had been wrong, Snake demanded that Huey patch him through to the Pentagon. Making contact with the chairman, Snake ordered him to abort the retaliatory strike, telling him of the false data leak executed by the now dead CIA station chief of South America. As proof of his identity of Big Boss, Snake described to him the events of his secret debriefing by former President Johnson following Snake Eater, to which the chairman had been in attendance as the Army Chief of Staff. Convinced of Snake's truthfulness, the chairman told everyone that the Soviet missiles were fakes, and that it was indeed Big Boss who had contacted them. However, some members remained skeptical, and one officer pulling a gun on the chairman after he attempted to call off the retaliatory strike. Just as all hope seemed lost, the mammal pod opened of its own accord, allowing Snake access to the boss AI in order to remove all of its memory boards. However, the data uplink remained in effect. Meanwhile, the ECR officer holding the chairman at gunpoint declared his authority to call the nuclear strike, and he did so, remarking that deterrence was nothing more than a fool's dream. At the missile base, Strangelove told Snake that Peace Walker's second AI, the reptile pod, must have overtaken the functions of the mammal pod. Snake, in desperation, tried to damage Peace Walker as much as possible, and the machine seemingly malfunctioned, then began to stand upright. The AI then began to play back the Carpenters song, which had been a hit in 1973, using the voice of the boss herself via its speech synthesis system. Peace Walker then began to enter the lake, causing Strangelove to remark that she was trying to drown herself to stop the data transmission. The missiles on NORAD HQ's radar then disappeared and were replaced by peace symbols. Huey deduced that in a similar function to the human brain, Peace Walker must have used functional compensation to take over its tasks, as a result of the mammal and reptile pods essentially acting as one. Strangelove wondered if her memories remained in her through the song. Huey then mentioned that it was not thinking clearly and was instead using its heart. Miller then stated that the boss's innocence had been proven and requested for Snake to listen to her song. Strangelove then realized and understood why the boss had done what she did 10 years ago. When she went into space as part of the Mercury project, she saw a beauty other than war. She put down her gun and instead chose to sing. They would all hear her singing, and she sacrificed everything to have her will live on. She couldn't achieve it, but she still sang, hoping for the illusion called peace that could not be found. Snake, after mirroring his salute 10 years ago at the boss's grave, then removed his bandana, where it was lost to the wind. Afterwards, Snake held a brief conversation with Miller, in which he declared that he had again found himself and wished to live his life differently from that of the boss. He felt that she had betrayed him and everything she did as a soldier by lowering her gun and surrendering her life merely for her country. Snake finally requested that he be known as Big Boss from then on. Um, so that was a lot. There was a lot of just me reading there. Um, but the fact that, at the end of the day, he saw the boss's sacrifice and her choosing peace over war as a weakness tells you right there where the boss is headed, or Big Boss is headed, if you didn't already know.
Yeah.
But what did you think of the first ending of the game? I guess we can call it. Um,
Yeah. I think the finale is fantastic. I think it's really strong, and I think it's tragic because I mean you see it coming that there's multiple times in the story that big boss is like he likes the idea of peace, but he doesn't know how he would function in a society that's completely like without conflict and war. Like what would his role in that society be? Like I think he admires what Paz is trying to do, and to an extent supports it, but I think maybe he's more of an extreme realist, if that makes sense. Uh, Whereas Paz and people like the boss are, dream of a better world. I think Big Boss sees himself as more practical.
yeah, he sees ver- instead of dreaming of a better tomorrow, he sees the day he's in right now and what his role is in that. I
Yeah,
think so. It definitely, big contrast between the boss's um, dreams and um, big boss's dreams, and it's kind of funny too because you heard in Metal Gear Solid One, Liquid talking about carrying on the will of Big Boss, and when Big Boss himself said to hell with the will of the boss. So I think it's an interesting contrast between the two there, um, because Liquid saw Big Boss as this incredible hero, not for any one country, but for himself and the mercenaries that he brought in under him. Whereas the boss, in her actions, was, I mean, the way it's presented, a true hero, um, not just for America, but for world peace. And Big Boss kind of just spits on that legacy and says, calling her weak and um, saying that, you know, there's why put down your weapons whenever you could continue this life forever is kind of what it feels like.
Yeah, because I mean, she was the one that taught him how to fight in the first place. So it's like, wait, you showed me how to be a soldier, and then you're telling me not to be a soldier.
Yeah. It's very interesting. The fact that he just kind of, which I mean, it's a gradual decline throughout the game,
For sure.
as you see him become more and more disillusioned with the idea of peace and of it actually being attainable. Um, but to have him at the end just be like, "Oh, she was dumb for doing that," it kind of took me aback. Like, I thought you idolized this person, your mentor, the one that taught you everything that you knew, and in Metal Gear Solid 3, it kind of seemed like, the idea was there that she was sacrificing herself for the betterment of uh, America. And he kind of had a chip on his shoulder about it, but I think that Big Boss understood why she felt like she had to do that more than this Big Boss who has spent 10 years as a mercenary building up this force that's just unwilling to let go of the power that he is attaining. At least that's kind of my read on the situation.
Yeah, no, I think that's accurate, and especially once we get to the second ending, it kind of shows like an even further attitude shift because two other people that are close to him, uh, again, there's another betrayal of sorts.
Now, I will say before we get into this, full disclosure, I have not played beyond this point. Alex, you've gotten both the chapter 4 ending and the chapter 5 ending,
Yes.
and then some. I don't think it's a stretch to say you've put significantly more hours into this game than me.
Yeah. So I
Um,
I don't know what was your final time? Do you know what it is?
oh gosh, I couldn't tell you. I didn't look before we started.
That's all right
I,
because
I
I've
think
got
it was around. I think it might have been around like 20-ish hours.
okay. So for me, I have the exact numbers for. So when I finished chapter 4, which is quote unquote the main story, it was 19 hours and 23 minutes, and then finishing adding chapter 5 on top of that bumped that all the way up to 37 hours and 58 minutes.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
almost double.
Yeah. So um that's why it's like when we kind of talked off air, I was like, I think chapter 5 kind of hurts the game if you're playing it like what we're playing through the series. But I could see before we get into, I guess, the quote unquote story content of chapter 5, which there's very little until the end, in my opinion. Um, I could see like if this is like your game that you're playing for like a year, building up your base while playing until you're waiting for the next Metal Gear game to come out. Um, Obviously, that wouldn't be a problem, and it'd be probably fun too. And the game was still incredibly fun, which we'll get into in gameplay. But chapter 5, you're just like trying to get through the game to get the quote unquote true ending. The 6 or 7 times that you have to go find Zadornov after he escapes, it becomes a bit tedious.
Yeah. I and that's one thing that I was kind of um I didn't intentionally do it whenever we went into this, but I thought it would be interesting to see how our opinions of the game differ between you and I, because I'm looking right here at on the IGN walkthrough wiki for Peace Walker. Chapter 5 has 7 missions. Of those 7 missions, 6 of them are Zadornov search 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Yep.
So it's it seems like it's quite excessive. And
And
the
you
fact that you've got to go through and do a bunch of side ops before you ever get presented
right,
with them.
because you can't just go through all of those at back to back. You have to you play one and then you play a couple of side ops and you have to like I played with a guide, so the fact that it still took me an additional almost 20 hours should say something. Even when I played with a guide telling me, okay, you have to get your base up to this number in this stack, and then you have to make sure that your crew has a certain level in one area. It's like there's like 4 or 5 different requirements that you had to have in order to unlock each chapter. Um, so that should tell you something.
Yeah.
Um,
Um do you want to, so before we do this, do you want to go into overall thoughts on the game before we start this, or do you want to go through and kind of, I'll read through the story and you give your experience of chapter 5, and then we can go into our like design, overall thoughts, all
Yeah,
that stuff.
I feel like that. I mean, the story for chapter 5 should be relatively short because I mean,
Okay.
literally, it's him Zadornov escaping over and over and over again, and them trying to figure out who's helping him.
All right. So we'll go on with that then. After the events in Costa Rica and Nicaragua, Paz was evicted from her school dorm since her scholarship had come from Zadornov, so Snake allowed her to stay at Mother Base to help out. Since Coldman's death left Strangelove without a job, Snake also accepted her and she began working on the MSF own AI weapon called Metal Gear Zeke alongside Huey. The mech was later armed with Peace Walker's nuclear warheads, which was recovered from the bottom of Lago Cociboca in order to provide a nuclear deterrent for the expanded Mother Base. Zadornov also escaped his cell several times, forcing the MSF to find and recapture him. On the last time, see they blasted through 6 missions in one sentence. That should tell you all you need to know. On the last time, Snake found him at the shooting range and killed him in self defense after Zadornov tried to gun him down. Dying, Zadornov then launched his prosthetic hand at Snake, revealed to be a rocket powered projectile. After mentioning that his work was done, though he again missed his target. Snake was suspicious because Zadornov's numerous escapes pointed to an inside job. Miller alerted him about Zeke suddenly moving out of its hangar and rising to the surface of Mother Base. Snake arrived on Mother Base's deck to discover that Miller was manually operating the Zeke unit. Miller was unable to shut it down remotely, with Paz revealing that she had made modifications to Zeke while Zadornov had diverted their attention with his multiple escape attempts. She then announced that she was taking it back to their leaders, Cypher, and that her real name was Pacifica Ocean, almost as bad as Hot Coldman. Her portrayal as an ambassador of peace had simply been an elaborate ruse, and that the real Peace Walker project would soon be fulfilled. Pacifica accused Snake of having taken the wrong path regarding his parting ways from his former FOX commander and friend Zero 2 years earlier. The two men had been unable to come to terms with their sorrow over the boss's death, so they had each decided to carry on the will of their hero. However, they could not agree on what that will was, so they split up and became bitter enemies. Pacifica then demanded that Snake follow the will of Cypher. With the Cold War nearing an end, the age of electronic intelligence would come to the fore, and Cypher planned to unite the various agencies of the intelligence community under a single will. Cypher would then gather information with the intent of guiding the world and its people's minds, with the populace remained while the populace remained blissfully unaware. Ultimate control will provide the illusion of peace, and a world without borders would arise, accomplishing what the boss had apparently long sought for. By obeying Cypher, the MSF would act as a deterrent against forces that would threaten the development of this new world order, distracting the old order's eyes with Snake's charisma and military prowess. Reassuring Snake that he would be allowed to retain control of MSF and Zeke, Pacifica beckoned for him to accept Cypher's offer. Snake denied her accusation that he was afraid to abandon his life's calling, as the boss had supposedly done, and refused the proposal. Rescinding the offer, Pacifica then sought to launch a nuclear strike at the U.S. East Coast, then framed the MSF as an extremist cult. Snake took on and destroyed Zeke, but before it was destroyed, Paz warned of Snake becoming an international criminal in the decades ahead. Zeke then exploded, and Paz was thrown by force of the explosion into the ocean. Big Boss can only express remorse at having to fight Paz. The remains of Zeke were later salvaged, with Strangelove remarking that the AI has a backup copy. Strangelove and Huey also began to have a better understanding of each other. A few hours after the destruction of Zeke, Miller admitted learning of Paz's real identity and purpose well beforehand, and that Cypher was Major Zero, who who perpetrated the whole plot and indirectly triggered MSF's expansion. Although Snake was angry, Miller explained that MSF set a new trend in military operations and their actions in Costa Rica, and predicted that the end of the Cold War would give rise to regional conflicts where the MSF could thrive. Since the MSF's battle capabilities disrupted the global military power balance, Snake warned that certain forces would definitely try to take them down, hence their need to continue operating outside of society. In a later address over a loudspeaker, Snake told his troops that their group would serve under anyone, regardless of nation and ideology, and that they soon would build a nation they could call their own, Outer Heaven. So this is Big Boss's dream.
Yep.
So I guess first thing I want to ask, I know it added almost 20 hours to your playtime, but do you feel like the story payoff was worth all of the extra effort that you put in?
That's that's a hard question to answer because the ending is pretty great, and obviously it leads into stuff for Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain. And I haven't even touched Phantom Pain yet. I'm just assuming. But I don't know. That's a tough question to answer. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. Again, I think that it would definitely be worth it to play it over like a longer period of time. I mean, I played the game over like a 2.5 month period, but I could see like, I mean, Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes came out in 2014, and this came out in 2010. So, if you're playing this over a 4 year period, just waiting for the next Metal Gear Solid to come out, obviously that's more than enough time to pump into this. And it's like a lot of the people that played along with me had well over 500 to 1,000 hours into the game, which is that's like MMO numbers. Um,
Yeah.
so
I believe we have a comment here on the Twitch chat from Master Knuckles One. I can confirm I have 3,000 hours in this game and I loved it.
yeah. So
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 it's
you know, uh, I'm somewhere on the fence. Like I can't decide either way. I think I'm glad that I did it because it because for me it's like I'm playing through the series for the first time, whereas like you've already played Metal Gear Solid 5, so it's like you kind of already knew where Paz was going to be at, whereas like I didn't know at all that that was coming. And then of course Miller's semi betrayal as well, where he's like, "Oh, but I did it for us," type thing. But it's like that trust has been broken. It's like Big Boss is gonna have to like watch his back to make sure. Okay, what else is Kaz gonna hide from me in the future?
yeah. And I feel like that mistrust and kind of continuing to close himself off to the people around him, that only helps to build him up to the big boss that we meet in Metal Gear. So it's I mean, at this point, it's really interesting that Kojima decided to build the series out in this way, because as we come to the final entries of the series, we're kind of coming full circle to the beginning of the series, in a way.
Right.
And it's cool to, because his end, like how Big Boss's story ends out at this point, and the fact that you're seeing him slowly devolve. I feel like the uh, parallel between Big Boss and Anakin Skywalker that you made earlier was perfect,
Yeah.
because it really is that same story of seeing him slowly lose himself and become something unrecognizable from what he originally was.
Right. And a twist that I thought was going to happen was I thought for sure Ocelot was going to show up at the end of chapter 5 somehow. Like he was going to be behind the whole thing cuz he's been in every single one of these games since Metal Gear Solid. Um so
I
I
will
was
say
just
I'm genuinely surprised that we've not gotten any Ocelot action.
yeah, like he
Um,
wasn't in Peace Walker at all, not even name dropped. I mean, I guess the best I could say is maybe there's a side up where he appears, but not that I'm aware of.
well, Ocelot may not appear, but you know who does make an appearance in Peace Walker?
uh, the real main character of the series, Johnny.
Johnny. I I had a recruitable soldier named Johnny, and as soon as I got him, I had to send you a picture because I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's Johnny!" I didn't even know that he was going to be in this game, but here he was, staring back at me.
Yep, yep. Yeah. I don't. I assume I probably got him because I recruited so many people. Why I kidnapped so many guards that I'm sure I got him by accident and didn't even realize it. Obviously, the Kojima one stuck out like a sore thumb. Um,
Oh yeah.
but well, should we use this opportunity to go straight into gameplay?
Yeah, yeah. Seems like a great opportunity because the gameplay is very different this go around from what it has been in the past. Oh, actually, just kidding. I have here. I want to ask you before we do go into that about some of the side content, because I know you played a lot of the side ops, and there's
Yep.
one in particular that I wanted to kind of pick your brain on, and that is the one where Big Boss fights a dragon.
Yeah. So they did a collab with the Monster Hunter series, a Capcom series. And there's three of them where you go to this island and you meet this cat during one of the story missions that you play when you play through it a second time. If you go back to this pier, there'll be this cat on this little boat, and he just starts talking to Big Boss and talking about these monsters that are on this island. And of course, Chico gets really excited. Uh, but these are probably the most unique boss fights in the game, because each one has kind of a different shtick. There's a dragon that flies, and there's one that kind of throws up, gathers up rocks and throws it at you. And then the last one, Gear Rex, has this like sonic weapon that will stun you if you're not paying attention. Um, so those were a blast to play through. Like that is probably some of my favorite content in the game.
Yeah, I saw. I can't remember if it was a short that you had put out or if I caught it on stream for a little bit, but I saw you playing that, and I was just in amazement that it even existed. Because I could see them doing maybe a crossover with another Konami um, uh, IP, but this is on the level of like Assassin's Creed and Final Fantasy 15.
Right. Yeah, two
That
different
those
companies.
kind of crossovers. I mean, um, but no, I just wanted you to just to mention it, have it on record here because I just think it's so cool. But now, yeah, if you want to get into gameplay, um, it is very different from what we've played in the series so far. So let's just go over like the overall, and then we can get down into the minutia of it. So whenever you get into the game and before you get into each mission, it's like you can select each mission on a little menu, and then you go in and you can actually choose a loadout every time you go into a mission. This time, it's not like the previous Metal Gears where you have to build out your loadout and discover things as you go, and you keep that with you at all times. It's you have a limited inventory that you have to be very selective over what you bring into each mission. So that led to me like in the boss fights carrying heavier artillery, and then in the missions where you're just up against people, have like that um, the tranquilizer pistol and an AR or an AK. Um, and it lets you play around a lot with the how you want to approach each mission. Alex, how did you feel about this new way of going into each encounter?
I really enjoyed that. I mean, I guess narratively it has a couple of hiccups, but as far as like a gameplay thing, like you could see it as like Big Boss goes back to Mother Base to sort of regroup everything, and of course he has the item drops that could happen between each chapter as well. Um, and I this is also one of the first games to kind of go over the shoulder, like you're behind the character. And I know that was an option later on in Metal Gear Solid 3 for further releases, but when I played it, I wanted to play it the original way. So this is the first Metal Gear game I've played where you're behind the character with a almost third person look. So that really changes things up too. Um, but one of my favorite aspects of the game is the Fulton recovery system because it's hilarious. So it's like you can knock
Yeah.
out these guys with your trank gun, and then you walk over, you put a parachute on them, and they just shoot up into the sky as a helicopter picks them up. It reminds me of the skyhook scene from The Dark Knight, when Batman kidnaps that business guy and he just gets yanked out the window.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something that like that and the fact that you have to actually build out your mother base really shook up the gameplay in a bunch of different ways. And that's one of my favorite additions to this game is the fact that you have to bring these soldiers back and manage, what department they're going to go into, what kind of work they'll do. Um, you pick what R&D focuses on, like what type of weapons they develop for you and stuff, um, which really brought like a new foil to the Metal Gear Solid formula.
Right.
But I'll have to say my favorite addition to this game is the crouch walk.
Oh
You
yeah,
can
for sure.
finally crouch and move at the same time.
But you can't crawl and move.
No, I'll take it. I prefer the crouch walk over the belly shimmy. Uh, but no, what did you think about the mother base aspect and like the outer ops and picking soldiers to send to battles
At first,
elsewhere,
I was like,
all of
ooh.
that?
At first, I was like, ooh, I don't know about this because it's a lot to like figure out at first. But like once you kind of like get in the flow of it, and of course, like Miller really does a good job of explaining how everything works. And of course, like you're gonna screw some stuff up and not put soldiers where they're supposed to be, or not uh, put in like level up your R&D department as much as maybe you should early on in the game. But like once you get that figured out, it's a lot of fun because it kind of like um, you see those numbers climb, and then also all of a sudden after each mission you're getting new weapons, and you're seeing your soldiers experience points go up, and then you're also seeing a visual when you go back to like kind of the menu of the base building itself out too.
Yeah. And really, like, the auto assign feature in Mother Base helps a lot as you're like starting to get your feet wet with it and trying to figure everything out. But as you go on, I don't know if you did this, but I found myself, if there's like a certain thing like R&D needs that I don't have the R&D level for, I'll take soldiers from different departments and put them in R&D just to boost the level up a little bit more
Yeah,
to get
because I
what I
mean
need, and then I'll put them back after that.
that's how it would work in real life. It's like, oh, we've got X amount of soldiers sick in the kitchen, so we're gonna take some from the engine room and put them in there instead, or we're gonna take guys from intelligence that are okay with R&D for a little bit, so that way we can get our next rocket launcher after the next two missions or something like that.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a cool little like, I don't want to call it tactical, but you have to think more strategically about what weapons you want to use because you've got a certain amount of GP that you can use to develop these things, and um, you know, it's just, it adds a nice little foil that I really found almost addictive to the like the mother base stuff, and especially in Phantom Pain. I really got addicted to like just managing mother base and making sure that it was peak efficiency at all times.
Yeah,
Um
and I think this game, surprisingly, what surprised me, because again, this is a PSP game we're talking about, did a really good job with enemy variety with like the little soldiers. Like, I mean, you got regular guys, you got guys with machine guns, you got snipers, and you got people in like ghillie suits that will like hide in the background. Um, and although I think the AI on these guys aren't as intelligent as the ones from Metal Gear Solid 2 or 3, they're somewhere in between Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 for me. Like, they're a lot easier to fool. And I
yeah.
love that you can take like an empty mag and throw it to get their attention. Like, that's very Alien Isolation, which is one of my favorite games. Um, so, uh, all around, I think so far this is gameplay wise the most fun. Like, and the thing that I mean, each of these games have been surprisingly fun since Metal Gear Solid, uh, where it's just fun to play. And I mean, gameplay to me is king because we're talking about video games. Like, obviously the story is important for this series in particular, but at the end of the day, this is a video game. And I think they really knocked it out of the park. Like, I think the gameplay loop is an absolute blast.
Yeah, I think I told you whenever I've started the game, that playing it uh almost made me nostalgic for the Phantom Pain and Ground Zeroes, because it felt so similar in its moment to moment gameplay that it really kind of took me back for a moment and made me remember the games that helped me to fall in love with the series in the first place. So I thought, that's not going to be everyone's experience, but I thought that that was like, it kind of made me appreciate Peace Walker that much more.
Yeah, and I think it does a good job of adding elements from the other games we've played so far. Like, obviously the ration system, and I'm glad that it kind of did away with what was introduced in Metal Gear Solid 3, where you have to like repair certain body parts. But I love the variety of food that Snake can have. Like, I just love that, between like fights where he's hurt, he's just taking out like a bag of chips and downing it real quick to help heal himself.
Or getting some tea real quick, and
Right, because there is
all
a
sorts of different stuff.
there's a secondary stat, like, that's like basically his mental health, I guess is how I would describe it. And you have some
Yeah.
items that can repair that as well, or repair that exclusively. Because like what happens is if that gets too low, he just is knocked out for a second, which can be really bad if people are shooting at you.
Yeah. But overall, I mean, I feel like most of the improvements that they made to the gameplay were positive. I agree with you. I feel like it's one of, if not the most solid gameplay experiences in the series so far. Um, so I'm really excited to see how you, which you've played Ground Zeroes, and we're planning to talk about that soon. But once you get into the Phantom Pain, I'm very excited to hear what you think about that, because based on what you said about Peace Walker, you are really going to love Phantom Pain.
Yeah, and I think another thing, like especially with the boss fights, again, I got to play with other people. Like it was cool, like setting up a lobby and then waiting like 5 or 10 minutes and just see like one or two people come in and then we fight a boss. And these are complete strangers from different parts of not only the country but from the world. Like there were, I had people from, like I said, Mexico, Japan, and then different parts of the U.S. I don't think I got any other countries besides Japan and Mexico. Um, but eventually, it's like a couple of them, you know, got into contact with me through the PlayStation Network and was like, "Hey, I'll help you out with other stuff too." And I got part. I'm in the Peace Walker Discord now, where when I was stuck on a boss, I'd be like, "Hey, I could really use some help," and they would just hop in, and a boss fight that was taking me like an hour would take like 5 or 10 minutes because these guys would just have weapons that I couldn't even like fathom, where they're like throwing grenades and then all of a sudden the soldiers are just being yanked up into the sky by the Fulton, and it was crazy.
Yeah, I feel like I'm hoping that the new release will rejuvenate that online presence, because I really feel like I kind of missed out on part of the experience not being able to do that. Um, but I'm really glad that that's integrated in to the core experience. Because I mean, another thing too that we didn't even mention, you don't have to go into most of these missions as Big Boss.
Right,
You can choose different people from other base that you've picked up along the way, um, which they all have different stats. You know, they may not be as efficient in combat as Big Boss, but they may be higher in something else. So which I never did that in this game. I just stuck to Big Boss unless some of the side ops make you choose someone different.
right.
Um,
They do. Some of them
but
do. Um, and I feel like there was another point I wanted to make. Oh yeah, there's also a versus mode where you can play against other people, and I did that a handful of times, fully knowing that I would be absolutely destroyed. But I at least wanted to experience it, and the funniest thing is like there's an ability where you can leave down a magazine. And when I say a magazine, I'm not like talking like a gun magazine. Like I'm talking about the dirty magazines that have been appearing in all these games. And what happens is when you walk past one of these, you know, naughty magazines, your character will stop and look at it, and that'll give the other players an opportunity to take you out. And I just remember that happening for the first time and being like, wait, why is my character looking at the ground? And I just see a magazine with a cute girl on front of it as I'm getting sniped.
yeah, and that's kind of similar to like the MGO that I had mentioned to you in Phantom Pain that I had played a little bit back in the day. Um, they're similar to the verses that you're describing here. So that would be fun to like hop in with hopefully some people from our community and get to play a little bit of Metal Gear Online whenever we get to Phantom Pain.
Absolutely.
Um, but is there anything else you wanted to cover on the gameplay
No,
before we get to
I
the
think
design?
that's the game's strong suit. Honestly, I mean the story's really good, but I think the gameplay is by far and away the really fantastic.
Absolutely. All right, we'll go on to the design and music. which we've touched on this a little bit with the motion comic part. Is there any Are there any other points that you really want to touch on with the
So,
design of the
I mean,
game?
keeping in mind like this is a PSP game, so it looks like a sort of, and I don't mean this as an insult, like it's impressive that the PSP can run something like this. It does look kind of like a middle ground PS2 game. Like obviously the visuals aren't on par with Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3. But um, I think that it gets the job done, and there is a good variety of environmental stuff that is impressive. But visually, like my favorite thing about this game is the comic book style for the cutscenes. Like I think that was a really wise decision. Um, I think the only thing I'm missing is the codec conversations. But the thing is, I don't even know how you would put those into the this game. Like there's like little bit of codec stuff, but you don't get the side by side talking heads. That's kind of replaced with the cassette stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I did want to mention one thing on the music, and that is that the AI boss's song is going to be ingrained in my head after that pupa fight. the
Yeah.
little the little chime that it would do.
Yeah, and I think again, like this, the score for this game is it's going for like an epic orchestral score on par with most '90s action movies. And I they obviously did pretty good with what they had for the limited technology with the PSP. Uh, but I think overall the I don't know if I like the music as much as the previous three games we've played, um, or even some of like the tracks from OG Metal Gear, which were very catchy. But it gets the job done, I think.
Yeah. I I'll say it's nothing to write home about. I just wanted to, call out that little jingle that the pupa does just to, as a funny little moment, but really that's the only one of the songs that really stuck out to me that I remembered after my time with the game. Um but it's overall I think it's a well-made game for sure. I love the care and attention to detail that you can tell went into it, especially with those comic cutscenes. Um, but yeah, really, that's kind of the main thing that I would really have anything to say about is those comic cutscenes. Um, so if you don't have anything else, we can go on to our overall thoughts and ranking of the games.
Yeah, yeah, let's do it.
All right. So after it's all said and done, Alex, first, what did you think of the overall experience? What did you like? What did you hate? And
Um,
second, where does it fall in your rankings?
so I think I think that this is a really great game. I think that if you skip this one just because it's like it's the PSP game, I don't need to mess with this. Totally disagree. I think that this is just as essential as all the numbered ones. Um, Personally, from both a story and gameplay. And the thing that surprised me was how smooth the gameplay felt. Like I thought maybe there would be some jankiness from it being a PSP game, but whatever they did with the HD collection um, really helped the gameplay feel just as smooth as the previous two games. I mean, I still think Metal Gear Solid 2 probably still has the smoothest controls, but these were shockingly good. Like with the exception of like the mishaps with my controller, I didn't really experience any frustrations other than like there were times where I had to act very quickly and it's just like my reaction time just was not there.
All right. Yeah, I'll have to agree with you. It's one of the most solid experiences that I've had in the series, no pun intended. Um, but I feel like a lot of my love comes from the love that I had for Phantom Pain, um, gameplay wise. But I also feel like it told a very compelling story, at least in the first four chapters, that really, you know, there's not many stories out there that hit the same way that a Metal Gear Solid story does. You know, you've got tons of espionage stories and military stories and stuff like that, but none of them feel the way a Metal Gear Solid game feels. You know, you're not gonna pick up Spec Ops: The Line and feel the same way you do whenever you play Metal Gear Solid. But I feel like each of these games are special in their own right, um, because of that. But I definitely feel like this is one of the best examples, gameplay wise, especially of what the series can do. Did you have your ranking
Yep,
ready,
yep.
Alex?
I'm ready. Do you want to go first or should I go first?
I'll let you go first.
Okay. So, going from. Should I go top to bottom or bottom to top? Because I can never decide.
Um,
I feel like we usually go
I
from the
I
bottom.
normally yeah, I normally go from the bottom up.
Okay. All right. So, the very bottom of my list is Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. And then above that is Metal Gear, the original. Above that is Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. And then Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, and Metal Gear Solid. And there were times where I thought about putting this above 2 and 3. Um, but I think the story is still really good. But I think that the fact that there aren't any interesting bosses, like bosses with actual like personalities and character, uh, is kind of a drawback for me. And then um, Coldman is an okay villain. He's despicable in a similar way to Volgin, but the thing is, Volgin had the boss to kind of back him up. Because I feel like if in MGS3, if Volgin was the only main antagonist, it wouldn't have been as interesting. Um,
Yeah, get into like cartoony villain territory.
right. So I think that the villains, other than Doctor Strangelove, who is both an antagonist and an uneasy ally, was probably the most interesting of the bad guys. So I think the fact that the villains weren't as strong this time around, and I think that the way that we played this game and tried to get through chapter 5 was a bit of a slog, and putting sort of an asterisk on that. Um, Still really great game. Like I mean, all all those top 4 games for me are still fantastic, and something that I'm looking forward to replaying again. Like Peace Walker is a good example of one like where you can get an itch to play it and then play a mission or two, um, without having to like restart the game, if that makes sense. So again for me, it'll be in my number 4 spot.
All right. Well, for me, I actually had to do a bit of shifting around on my rankings whenever I was looking at my list and where to put Peace Walker on it. Um, and I'll explain my rationale after I tell you my rankings. So, going bottom up, number 6, Metal Gear 2. Number 5 is Metal Gear. Number 4 is Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. Number 3 will be Peace Walker. Number 2 is Metal Gear Solid, and number 1 was Metal Gear Solid 2. So originally, I had Metal Gear Solid 3 above Metal Gear Solid. However, and this could be due to me not playing Chapter 5 as well. I felt like this was a better experience for me personally than Metal Gear Solid 3 was.
Okay.
Overall, I enjoyed the gameplay better. You didn't have to pick a bullet out of you after every time you fight somebody. Um, but I felt like I enjoyed it more than Metal Gear Solid 3 overall, but I could not justify putting it above Metal Gear Solid. So I did switch those around, putting Metal Gear Solid above Peace Walker and Peace Walker above Metal Gear Solid 3. 2 is still, in my opinion, the gold standard of the series. Um, I don't know at this point. I don't know if that'll change or not. Um, I would love to see, either Phantom Pain whenever we get back around, me replaying that, or 4 to overtake that. I would love to see a game better than that, but I just don't really see it happening. And I've beaten this horse, killed it 3 times already. So
You
I won't go
shot it
into
after
all.
it fell off the mountain.
um, but yeah, just I feel like Peace Walker is a great example of how to do Metal Gear on the handheld right. Um, I've not played Portable Ops or Acid or any of the others, but I feel like that you're not going to get much better than this on a handheld Metal Gear Solid game. So I uh, have it here at number 3. Yeah, that's about the long and short of it.
Yeah, I think that's respectable. Well, there's our rankings. We didn't have any questions on our socials, but if you're listening to this afterwards, we're going to be recording. We'll have, well, I might have this posted after we record Ground Zero's episode, but feel free to post questions on any of our socials or in the Discord for Ground Zeroes or the Phantom Pain, and we'll be happy to answer those on the show.
Yeah. Is there anything else you have before we sign off?
No, I don't think so. It's like our next episode is going to be Ground Zeroes, and then we'll have the Phantom Pain after that.
All right, plugs. Follow all of our socials. We've got a Discord, which should be in the description of the Twitch VOD, as well as wherever you're watching or listening to this. Um, so until next time,
Hey,
boss,
boss.
sign us off.
Yeah, hey, boss. Sign us off.
I'm not your boss anymore. There's nothing for you here. Go home.